Yeah, there's one squib that's a battleship, and there's one squib that's Clint Eastwood. All right, so welcome everybody to the
Okay.
latest Lock and Load show. Was the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring except for big ass battleship called the USS Alabama, BB-60, and we had somebody in another chat on the external said they liked our occasional naval vessel lock and load shows, and Squibb and his family like to go to visit these. I guess they're naval heritage museums now, mostly. And as the nature of warfare, naval warfare has changed over time, they don't. There's no currently commissioned battleships in the U.S. Navy. Uh, for better or for worse, that's the way that is. Whether due to advances in rocketry, computer warfare, or what have you, the big old dreadnoughts are historical icons at this point. So we thought we'd visit one here as kind of a Christmas present for everybody that likes naval vessels shows. So I'm going to put Squibb on present. I don't have too much to add to that because he's our expert. So let me do that. And which Squibb do I put on present? The one with the battleship? Yeah, okay. Let's try that
Yep.
one. Oops, he disappeared. There's two of you. Which one? Okay. I'll select this one. Okay, I see a battleship on it, so I'm guessing that's the Alabama.
Yeah.
Is this your view when you're flying a drone over it?
Oh, yeah. So you should be able to hear my voice over this, even though the screen share is coming from my desktop and my voice is coming from my phone. So good old Microsoft update means my Logitech headset, only the headset works, the mic doesn't work. So, and it's a lot easier to try to present off my desktop than it is to try to use my phone to do this. So, you want me to just go ahead and go with it?
Yeah, I might ask some questions, try and ask some semi-intelligent questions, and I'll try and boot up the external and relay any questions from there as soon as you get going on that ship, other than just the basics.
Okay.
Go ahead, load them up and shoot.
All right. So here is the USS Alabama. She's currently docked in Mobile. She's a museum. There's a lot of other things out there to see at the museum. The Alabama is a South Dakota class battleship. In that class, that includes the South Dakota, the Indiana, the Massachusetts, and the Alabama. She was launched on February 16th, 1942 in Norfolk, Virginia. She was decommissioned on January 9th, 1947, and she was turned into a memorial on June 11th, 1964. Now, in a previous show, we went over the USS New Jersey. She's docked in Camden, and she's an Iowa class battleship. That was our last class of battleships to be built. There was a Montana class after the Iowa class, but they were scrapped, so they never actually saw service. So I thought I would just do a basic comparison of an Iowa to a South Dakota class. They both use 16-inch guns and a lot of...
Whoa, what's that? That's Dusty. Let me mute him. He's muted. Sorry about that, guys. That was Dusty. Dusty, if you can't turn that shit off, I'll have to boot you out.
If he's in his pole barn and he's running something, I don't know.
Yeah, but I kept muting him, and he kept. All right, well, we'll see. If I'll just boot him out,
we'll just do the best we can. You know, this is the Lock and Load show, and we aim to please. So, South Dakota versus Iowa. I just put down a few basic stats. So, a South Dakota class battleship is 680 feet long, and an Iowa class battleship is 887 feet and 3 inches long. Now, having been on both, I can tell you, you really don't notice the size difference. But I think it was the fact that more areas of the Alabama seemed to be opened up than areas on the New Jersey. So the tour was about the same length. As far as being up on the deck, it really didn't feel like it was that much bigger. I'd say if anything, the fantail, that's the back of the ship, the stern, was probably longer on the Iowa because it could take helicopters, even though the Alabama did have some aircraft it could launch in World War II. But yeah, that was a real big surprise to me that it's almost 200 foot longer on an Iowa class, or over 200 foot longer. The beam is the same, which is a width. At the widest point, the ship is 108 feet and 2 inches wide, both classes. The tonnage, South Dakota class is 42,500 tons, and an Iowa class is 54,540 tons. The speed of both ships, the Iowa class is much faster. It's designed to keep up with a carrier task force. So South Dakota class is 28 knots and Iowa class is 33 knots. And somebody might go, well, that's only 5 knots. For ships, that's a big difference. And I went with World War II crew stats because the Iowa class served on into Korea, Vietnam, and the Persian Gulf War, so they were modernized and their crew complement changed. But South Dakota never went past World War II. So for World War II data, the crew complement of a South Dakota class was 2,500, and the crew complement of an Iowa class was 2,700. So that gives you your basic difference between the two. So here's a picture of the Alabama in 1943, and here she is last summer. So I've seen pictures where they've done some work to the hull in a cofferdam. So I would imagine this area around it could be blocked off and drained, but I don't have any data to back that up. I've just seen some pictures. And here's a more up close look. You've got a ramp to come aboard the ship, and you've got a ramp to leave the ship. And there she is from across the, well, I don't know what if you want to call it, a bay or sound or whatnot. When you leave, you get onto the expressway, and there's an exit you can get off, and you can take pictures of her. This is zoomed in, and I adjusted it a little bit because it's a little pixelated, but I wanted to get a picture of her from a distance.
What city did you say this is in? Mobile, Alabama?
Mobile. It's okay. It's just outside of Mobile. Well, it's in Mobile or right on the edge of town. If you're on I-10 and you're heading towards Pensacola, if you come down into Mobile and you start heading east towards Florida, that the exit to get off for the Battleship is there. It's clearly marked. It's easy to get to. If we stayed in downtown Mobile, and we drove to the Battleship in 10 minutes. So, and here it is. You see how far away I was when I took that picture. So when you get there, the first thing you see when you turn off the main street here and drive down the long drive to get to the park is, let's see, where are my notes here? That's a F4C Phantom. So that's the Charlie model Phantom. And then this is taken off of the Battleship, but you can see the whole complex. So there's a B-52D Stratofortress, and there's other aircraft, there's some missiles, and in these buildings over here, if you can see my cursor, these buildings over here, they're doing restoration on different aircraft and missiles.
So there's more in the museum than just the Battleship. There's aircraft and other things.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's this building here is where you would buy your tickets, and this is the gift shop, and it's pretty well stocked. And this building over here to the left is the aircraft museum, and inside they've got some aircraft. They're doing restoration work on some of them, so some of it's done in these buildings off to the side, and some they've actually got them in there and they're doing restoration. They've also got a replica of the U.S. or the CSS Hunley. That's the first submarine to be used successfully in war by the Confederacy. And there was a military truck parked back there. I think it was a 5-ton. So they might do some of the restoration work on some of the military vehicles they have here as well. So you get for when you come out here, you really get a whole lot for the tour. You don't just get the battleship. So if I can move here, you can see there's a B-25J Mitchell and there's a C-47D Skytrain Dakota. Let's see, what else did they used to call them? They call them, I think they called them Goonie Birds. They had a couple different names, but it's more or less a military DC-3. You can see off in the distance, there's a, let's see if I can get this to zoom in. Here we go. Come on. This is Windows for you. You can see off in the distance, you can see there's the expressway up there. So you just get off on the expressway and come down through here. Come down this long drive. There's the F4. You come down this long drive, follow it around, and come on in. So it's a pretty decent setup. I like the fact that they've got more than just the ship there.
When you get to the B-52, you've arrived. That's you're in the right spot.
Yeah. So for that guy, that YouTuber in California who said that California has the only B-52 on display, no. So here, they've also got a military vehicle park here. They've got some armored vehicles and they've got some artillery pieces. And we did go mostly to see the battleship, but there were a few other things there that I was kind of interested in seeing. Now,
on a side note, my father just happened today to be visiting the Pearl Harbor Pacific Aviation Museum. He took some photos. I only got one. So because they're cruising to. My folks are cruising to Hawaii, and so anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing his pictures from that museum.
Yeah, if you can forward some of that to me, I'd like that.
Okay, when I get them, I will.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So here is the USS Drum. We've already done a show on this, and in that show, I showed you the replica of the CSS Hunley, and they've got a PT boat, or like a riverine boat from Vietnam. And I may have shown some of the other items that are at the museum, but we did a whole walkthrough of the sub on, what was that, our second sub show?
I don't remember, but possibly. I remember the show, but it was a long time ago. So
yeah, these pictures are over a year old, so so like I said, you get a whole lot more than just the battleship when you go out there. So let's see here.
Bring a good set of walking shoes, I would guess.
Yeah, I would recommend it. The ramps are fairly easy to get up. There were more steps and ramps when we got on board the New Jersey, but this is docked closer to the shore. I believe this is a cofferdam that it's in, even though there's water in it, whereas the New Jersey was out in the river. So
it depends if you're like, my dad's 83, so I don't know if he could make it up all those steps. Probably he could, but he'd be tired when he did.
Well, with the New Jersey, you've got to go up some steps, whereas with this, you've got you can do ramp only, but then once you get on board, you've got all the ladder wells. So yeah, if you really have trouble getting up and down steps, I would recommend just staying on the main deck.
Yeah, I think that's what he did when he visited Iowa in San Pedro Harbor. Anyway, on with the show.
So here's a B-25J Mitchell. I believe the Juliet model was the last model of that.
That was the plane that did raid in Tokyo, in the Doolittle raid.
Yeah, the Doolittle raid was Bravo models. Those were B models, and this is a J model. So, but more or less, yeah, the same plane. Now, if you want to see a Bravo model B-25, all you have to do is drive a short distance from here to go to Pensacola to go to the Naval Aviation Museum there, and it's all Navy and Marine Corps aircraft except one. They've got a B-25 Bravo model, just like what would have been launched off of the, I think it was the Hornet?
Yes.
Yes. So it's the only Army Air Corps aircraft in the museum. Everything else is Navy, Marine Corps, and they may have Coast Guard. I can't remember. But its significance was that it was launched off of an aircraft carrier.
That was significant. That was a significant raid.
Well, the raid really didn't do a whole lot of damage strategically, but it was a morale booster and also kind of shook up the Japanese a little bit. Now they had to think about how they had to reallocate the resources.
It's
Yeah.
strategically saying it changed their strategic thinking, and it got them to approve Yamamoto's attack on Midway, which was a disaster for them. So you could say that strategically it did have an impact.
Well, from that point, yes, but as far as the damage that was done,
Yeah.
the damage the raid done was very little as far as taking out any sort of major asset for production or any time of wartime capability. But yeah, you're right
It's
about that. Yeah.
and relating it to current times, I mean, the two things that not the Japanese, that the Chinese people would remember most in positive, that put the American military in a positive light from the point of view of China, would be the Doolittle raid on Tokyo and the Flying Tigers. And those were the two things that like regular Chinese people would remember. Like if you wore a Doolittle's jacket or a Flying Tiger memorabilia when you were on tour in China, somebody might come up to you and start talking to you in bad English. But it's just what happened was I recently saw 30 Seconds in Tokyo, which is on Turner Classic Movies. You know me, movie guy, and it was just all the Chinese people that had to pick up the down pilots who just basically crash landed anywhere in China and like saved them from the Japanese army. They were just so grateful that they had raided Tokyo because the war that war was a nasty war, but Japan had invaded China and done some pretty dastardly things to the people there. But hey, war sucks. What else is new? All right, but the planes and the ships are cool. So that's always like watching these. Just brings up so many things you could talk about when you get into history. But
Well, yeah, if you think about it, I could take the pictures from this and turn it into 3 shows. I mean, I'm turning it into 2, but I suppose I could reorganize some of the stuff and turn it into a 3rd show. So
let's just try and get through this show one at a time.
One at a time. I mean, it's only taken a year and a half, but I'm showing some of this other stuff just to give people an idea of what else you get. It's fairly value added, and I'm not complaining about the New Jersey at all. The New Jersey just had the Battleship. That was it. Those people were really, really good. We really enjoyed our time there. They took really good care of us, friendly.
The docents. The docents. That's what they're called, the docents.
I guess.
Those are the people that take you on the tour and know.
No. It was a self-guided tour. They let me take the family on the tour. When I come on board ship, I turned towards the ship's ensign, saluted, and showed my kids, this is how you request permission to come aboard a military ship. And the guy said, oh, you've done this before. And I said, yeah, I've done this before. He goes, Navy or Marine Corps. He goes, do you need a guide? I go, no. He goes, all right, go ahead. Ship's yours. Go for it. And
the ship is yours.
So, well, there was really not a whole lot of other people there that day. I mean, somebody from the county let us park for free instead of paying to park in a parking structure. And
Captain Squibb.
Yes. And the volunteers that were on board answered any questions we had, and they took us into one part of the ship that you don't normally get to go into. It wasn't very far, and it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was just they were very, very good to us. We would definitely go back. They're talking about opening up more of the ship, so we kind of want to go see more. And after going to the Alabama here, where a lot more of the ship is opened up, it really gives you a better idea of how much more is below decks. But the Alabama, it's in addition to having more of the ship opened up, even though it's an older ship, I mean, not by a whole lot. It does have the air park and the armored vehicles and whatnot. So either way, I would recommend both battleships to anybody who wanted to go see one. And here you can see some of the armored vehicles and some of the artillery pieces. This is from the bow of the ship. And here's some more over here. And one of the ones I wanted to see was the Amtrak. So it's not the train, the Amtrak. This is an Amtrak from World War II. Now there's a modern day Amtrak, and it's similar to this, but this is a light armored amphibious tractor. So what it can do is it can travel on the ocean, it can travel in a river, it can go up the side of a steep mountain, it can go over obstacles, it can get over reefs, but it's lightly armored.
That was the problem they had at Tarawa, was it? Or is getting over the reefs? Or was
Yeah,
that? Yeah, okay.
and the Amtrak's could get over that as far as I know, but the LCUs, the utility landing craft, could not, unless it was high tide. So your Amtraks, once you hit the shore, these things can keep going. So you can move your troops inland. The thing is, though, they're lightly armored. So one hit from a tank, or some guys with some anti-tank weapons or mortars, or even machine gun fire to some extent can penetrate this hull. So it looks like a tank, but it really isn't. So it's really about just getting the troops from the ship to the shore, and then once they're on the shore, still being able to maneuver them around. And there's one of these up here. This is one model of it. There a couple different models. Um, we've got one up here. Some private owner up the street's got one, and it's just rusting away in his front yard. But
Wow.
the only other time I've seen one of these is at Camp Pendleton. They've got a park over on Main Side where they've got a lot of armor. So here you can see it from the side here. And then another one that I was really interested in seeing was this. This is an M42A1 Duster. So this is a light tank chassis with a pair of 40 millimeter Bofors on it for anti-aircraft use. But they really didn't have a whole lot of anti-aircraft roles for it. And my understanding was it was used in Vietnam on like a ground attack type role. And my understanding is that the Soviet ZSU-23, which is designed for anti-aircraft use, was used by the Iraqis against us as a ground attack role. Because I mean, if this thing can put projectiles high up in the air at high velocity that'll take down an aircraft, to a vehicle or structure or armored vehicle, it's going to tear it up. So I was kind of interested in seeing that. I kind of did a little bit of research before we went out there to kind of know what to look for. So here it is up front. You can see the 40 millimeter Bofors, and they've got the shield right here. I mean, it's an open gondola, cockpit, whatever you want to call it. And then here's an M475 Sherman. And right here we've got the one in the front is an M60A1 Patton, and the one in the back is an M26 Pershing. And here's another view of the Pershing. And then this right here was another one I wanted to see. This is an M1A1 120 millimeter Skysweeper cannon. So this is a post-World War II high-altitude anti-aircraft gun. It could shoot a projectile a range of 81,000 feet to an altitude of 57,500 feet. So I don't know where they get unless they tried to fire it in a straight line, I don't know where they get that information from. But this is what they used until they come up with the Nike Ajax missile. So I'm a big fan of the Nike project, the three different missiles that it used and what it led on to as far as later on with the Spartan and the Patriot and whatnot. But this is what they had for attacking high-flying bombers prior to that. So I really want to see one of these because there's only a few of these in museums.
Well, Nike is the Greek word for victory. And it's like famous in history when after the Battle of Marathon, they sent a messenger to the Greeks that the Greeks had defeated the Persians out front at Marathon. They sent the messenger who ran 28 miles to Athens and said one word, victory, Nike, and then he dropped dead. So that's why marathons are 28 miles, because of that run.
Oh, okay. I knew Nike was a Greek thing, but I didn't know that it meant victory.
Yeah.
I figured it was going to be some sort of like minor Greek god of something or other, but yeah.
Yeah, you could say that Nike was the goddess of victory, but it's like saying running into up to the beach and saying Apollo meant there'd be sunshine or something. And Nike was the goddess of victory, so he ran 28 miles, said Nike, and then he dropped dead from heat stroke. That means they won the battle.
So here's an M1. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that's of course them winning that battle was the precursor to pissing off Xerxes' father, who always wanted to invade Greece after that, and finally Xerxes did, and so that led to the Battle of Thermopylae. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. It's all right. So this is an M113 armored personnel carrier. Now there's so many variants of this thing. This one looks a little bit, I don't know, base model to me, so I'm not sure which variant it is or how old it is. And then right here, this is a...
Is that a Patton tank?
No. This is a Chinese main battle tank that was captured in Iraq. This is a Type 69-2 Golf. So Type 69-2G.
It looks like they ripped off a Patton and put reactive armor on it or something.
I think it's a Chinese knockoff of a T-55, but don't quote me on that. And then they got one of those duck boats over there. We didn't go on any duck boat tour, but yeah, this was brought back from Iraq, and it's there. Here's one of the ship's screws. You can see how big it is. It's pretty massive there.
Is that brass?
And I don't know what it's made out of, or if it's plated, or yeah. I'm afraid I'm not too keen on what
propellers.
That is. Okay. Yeah,
brass or copper.
I mean, I've steered a big ship before, but I didn't,
cast the propeller. Okay.
Yeah. This is supposed to be a statue of a recruit swearing in, and you enter the ship on the fantail here. You go up this ramp and you can see the people coming up and going down. It's pretty wide. Right back here, this is the hangar with the Air Museum in it. So you could go walk through the museum, then come up the ramp, or go out to the park and come back up the ramp. And you enter the ship on the fantail. You come up. See, here it is. It's pretty wide. I would say somebody getting pushed on a wheelchair wouldn't have a problem, but once you get on the main deck, there's really no way. These ships are military ships. They're not designed for handicap access, so I don't think you would get very far, but the main deck's fairly large. So the first thing you see here is the aft turret with the main armament here, the 16-inch guns. So I believe this is turret number 3. I believe it 1, 2, 3, but don't quote me on that either. So some people think that the South Dakota had 3 and the Iowa had 4 main turrets, but both classes had 3 turrets, 2 in the front, 1 in the back for their main armament. The Montana class was going to have 2 in the front and 2 in the back, but they weren't completed. And this is a lot like going on board the New Jersey. So just a short little ladder and crawl up inside of there. And once you're inside, these are about the same condition. This is the same kind of main armament that's on the Iowa class. So it's about the same condition as the ones on the New Jersey, even though they've seen more miles. So you can see that right here, this pivots here, and the shell comes up here, and then this drops down, and the shell and the powder and everything gets put into the gun. I should, before we go much further, I should, I guess, explain that some of the pictures are going to be a little bit blurry. It's not in perfect order from one end of the ship to the other, and I had to edit out a few things. I was just snapping pictures as fast as I could go and said I'll just edit them later. And when I did, I discovered that, a few of them are blurry. The light's not very good. It's kind of hard to see what exactly I'm looking at, so I'm not doing the ship justice.
Well, we're doing the best we can. What's this here?
Here's some of the control. You see the paint peeling off the ceiling of the inside the turret, but different indicators that they've got. They can call down for powder and ammunition, and they're getting information to put into the how they do this from a fire control room, where they're directing the fire with radar, and it's kind of complicated. It's a bunch of guys and mechanical computers. And here's one of the mechanical computers right here that they would use. And they had a set of parameters that they would plug in for how fast the ship's moving, how much the ship is rolling, how far away the target is, how fast the target's moving, even the humidity in the air. I mean, it's pretty interesting how they were able to do this all mechanically, or with very, very basic electrical and electronics. And you can see here on the back of the turret, they had a raft, and here they bring in the fresh air into the turret. It had to have been pretty cramped in there, and pretty bad. I mean, a lot of guys were on these gun crews, and the main guns were fairly big. I mean, this has got a lot of 5-inch guns on it as well, and we'll be seeing the inside of one of those later, but those are pretty confined as well.
Imagine it got pretty smoky inside, but and they must have had a lot of target practice drills, because it's important to be able to hit what you're aiming at with those things.
Yeah, gunnery practice was definitely a must. And people think that the Battleship was doing nothing but firing at 16-inch guns, but it fired a lot of its secondary armament. I would say probably more so, depending on what you're attacking, it's going to be cheaper, and it's also a lot easier to replace barrels and things like that.
The Iowa class had more, because of their faster speed, could keep up with the carriers, so they'd be used more in anti-aircraft defense of the carrier group than this would, because it didn't get assigned to that.
To protect the carriers, yes, but there's a bunch of other smaller ships bristling with guns to protect the carriers as well. The anti-aircraft for this is really more to protect this, because that's the biggest vulnerability for a battleship is aircraft. So it's really its anti-aircraft is there to protect itself, and its greatest thing that I guess to protect it against aircraft is all the armor on board. But I mean, that didn't save the Bismarck or the Yamato. So here's a plaque that's on the turret, and then here turning away from the turret, heading towards the fantail, going all the way to the aft end of the ship. And you can see here's the catapult for launching one of the Kingfisher aircraft that it kept on board. I don't know if it had 2, 3, or 4, but I know it must have had at least 2 Kingfishers, which are float planes. And you can see here it is. There's a little catwalk to get up here. They mounted up here. They had a crane that they could pick it up out of the water, put it on there, and have it ready to launch.
So they would go scouting for enemy ships or something like that.
Yes. And they could pick up down pilots. They could scout for enemy ships. They could also direct some of the gunfire, do reconnaissance as far as what kind of damage the gunfire did. I mean, it's kind of nice having the option of having your own aircraft on board instead of having to rely on somebody else. So here is a 20 millimeter Oerlikon cannon. There were a lot of these in use. They were on everything from a PT boat all the way up to a battleship. And
did you say it was called a Oerlikon?
Oerlikon, Oerli, yeah.
I never heard of that one before.
It's Swedish. Oh yeah, the company is still in business today, and they do more than just armament. But there's a 20 millimeter, and it doesn't use the same 20 millimeter shell that you'd find like on a Vulcan cannon. It's a different length and whatnot. But there's a drum magazine that you attach to it. If you see the movie Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, this is the kind of cannon they use to blow the vault. And the PT, whatever it is, PT 109 movie about John F. Kennedy, I think that was the one where they let the Pogue officer shoot down to zero off the back of the ship. He was using a cannon like this. I think that was the movie where it happened. So these are all over the place on the ship. Here is the Kingfisher aircraft inside their museum that's under restoration. So I believe the USS North Carolina in Wilmington has one already mounted on the fantail, on the catapult. And this is what it would have looked like. This is a 1943 picture of the Alabama So this is what the aircraft looked like on the catapult. You see it's turned sideways. You can see they got their whale boats here, and everything's all over the deck. And here's a little tubs with the anti-aircraft. They've got it all over the place here. So I did throw in a couple of DoD photos from World War II in with this for reference. So here's a crane that they would use to pick up the float planes and put them back on board. And you can see right in here, here's more anti-aircraft. And then from there, looking forward, you can see the turret and the main superstructure. And you see davits here for smaller boats. And here's your 40 millimeter Bofors cannons. These are all over as well. And then we're going forward. You can see these are 5-inch guns in a Mark 37 turret. So I believe this the ship's got 8 turrets. So 4 on the port side and 4 on the starboard side, 2 forward and 2 aft. So it makes 8 turrets, 16 guns total, and that's the secondary armament of the ship. Here are the 5-inch guns firing in World War II. And here's a closer up of the 40 millimeter. You can see there's the main 16-inch gun. They had anti-aircraft armament all over. Now I know on the New Jersey they do not have all of the secondary armament on board the ship. Some of it got taken off, and they were trying to restore it to where it would be. It's got more modern stuff on board because it's an Iowa class and they were modernized, but they're trying to put some of the World War II stuff back on board. And I believe they got their hands on, it was either the 40 millimeter or 20 millimeter cannon. I believe it was a 40.
Well, can you talk for a minute about the Bofors? Because I think when those came out, those were a market improvement over what they used to use.
Well, I mean, it just depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, the Bofors it's going to throw 40 millimeter explosive shell up there, whereas the 20 millimeters going to be a little bit more precision, a little bit more close in. But it's using an exploding shell more so than it's using an actual armor piercing round or something to take out the aircraft. I mean, they still use Bofors cannons today to some extent. But on naval ships, they started phasing these out in the 90s. On the ship I served aboard, it had standard armament of one of these mounted in front of the conning tower, and they stripped it right before I deployed on the ship. So we just used it for storage. We just used the old the emplacement there for storage. But the Bofors, you'll see them. Some people call them the pom-pom guns because they rock back and forth when they fire them. And they're fairly impressive.
What's interesting is that the cannons with exploding shells, against aircraft have a great effect. The Messerschmitt 109s, they had cannons. And so when they would go up against the Spitfires, they only had machine guns. So they could shoot holes, but if the Spitfires were like flying gas cans. So if a Messerschmitt managed to hit a Spitfire somewhere with one of those exploding shells, then it'd be like shooting a gas can. You could set on fire pretty easy if they could hit one. It was like flying a Spitfire was like flying a gas can.
So
there's a difference between bullets and cannon.
Yes, there is. I mean, and some of it is cost, space, rate of fire. I mean, there's a lot of different things involved. You say, well, why didn't they just use nothing but Bofors? Why'd they use a 20 millimeter? You know what? These are big. You're not going to fit them everywhere. You want to cover every angle. These aircraft are coming in, and they're coming in waves, and they're coming in from every angle. To some extent, you could even use the main guns for an anti-aircraft role. Maybe not on the American ships, but as far as I know, the Japanese ships had explosive shells that with I don't know if they were set to certain altitudes or if they had proximity fuses on them or how it worked out. But they even used their main guns in the anti-aircraft roles. And the American and Japanese ships kept adding more and more anti-aircraft guns. Every time the ships would come in for a refit during the war, they would just keep adding guns because the American ships would just pound the Japanese ships, and the Japanese planes would come into the American ships, and they were desperate not to get hit by a plane or to have a plane drop a bomb on, because it was just so devastating.
And the kamikazes became a threat towards the end of the war too that needed to be dealt with, and those were like the first ever naval guided missile was the kamikaze, basically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, more or less. So when you go aboard these ships, you may say, "Wow, that's a lot of guns." That may not have been the exact. There may have been more guns on board, especially at the height of the war. So, just if you think there's too many, there aren't enough, and if you think there's not enough, there were probably more. So the guns are very important. I mean, if somebody was in a main gun crew, that might seem a little bit more prestigious to somebody else, but without these Bofors cannons and the Oerlikon cannons and the 5-inch, you would not be able to. I mean, you could not protect the ship, and the ship was heavily armored. And there are areas of the ship that could take a direct hit and still be operational, but there's still a chance that something could get through. And another thing to consider is, for example, the German battleship Bismarck. Its guns were trained, were designed for shooting down modern fighters, and the British attacked it with swordfish biplanes, which were slower than modern fighters. So the guns actually couldn't hit the swordfish because they weren't designed to shoot at something that slow. And that might sound stupid to somebody, but
the way the sights were calibrated or something.
Right. So there's a lot of things that would change with these ships during the course of the war on both sides, Axis and Allies, where they would change, make adjustments, make improvements. Some of the ships, when they started the war, didn't have guns that could shoot at the modern fighter planes, and the planes were actually so fast they couldn't hit them, and they had to recalibrate and readjust them. So there's a whole lot of back and forth, and getting rid of stuff you didn't need, and adding stuff that you didn't think you were going to need initially. So these ships constantly are going in for maintenance. When you've got something this big, it's got to have it. And that's where they would make the changes, is when they had the downtime in dry dock.
Well, there wasn't a lot of time for dry dock when they were deployed in the Pacific. I mean, there wasn't any dry. I mean, what, New Caledonia? I mean, it wasn't like the naval shipyards. And it was basically when they got shot up, they tried to get them turned around as quickly as they could, and because they needed them.
Sometimes they would patch the holes and keep them out there. Other times they had floating dry docks, and they could do some service to them while they were out there. They also had repair ships, which looked like a cruise ship almost, but it was the entire ship. Everything on board was spare parts and machine shops and skilled trades. And these repair ships could do everything from a sub all the way to a full-size battleship or carrier. So without that repair ship, you were screwed. Without a floating dry dock, you might not be able to get in there and do some of the work. Otherwise, you'd have to bring the ship back to the States and go to one of the naval bases that had a dry dock big enough to put a naval vessel in.
I bet it was tough to get parts out in the middle of the Pacific. Those a certain kind of replacement part that you couldn't find.
So on board the ship itself, they do have the ability to fabricate certain things and do some repair work to keep the ship underway. All ships have it, and the battleship's pretty big, so it's got some extensive stuff. But a repair ship was like bringing a shipyard with you almost. I mean, without that repair ship, you were screwed. And they had the same deal. They could fabricate as well, but just imagine having a ship dedicated to doing nothing but providing repair parts, repair personnel, and fabrication to any ship of the fleet. So on its own, the battleship could do repair underways.
I imagine a lot of the crew was dedicated to that, just maintenance and upkeep and repair.
Well, 2,500 guys, and they've got to run 3 shifts, and some guys would man their battle stations. They weren't necessarily sitting at the guns 24/7. So sometimes when they call general quarters, you go to your battle station. That might be a gun emplacement or a damage control room. There's damage control stations all over the ship, ready to go at a moment's notice, and you're just sitting in there waiting until they tell you the fight's over, and you may have to patch a hole in the ship, or you may just sit there scared. And some people just hang tight in wherever they're at. I mean, the sick bay is going to have, they're going to be ready for action and all that. But just because you did a certain job that might seem a little bit boring doesn't mean that you never saw any action when you were on one of these ships.
So what are we looking at right here?
So here's when you go into the ship. So you can walk around on deck all you want, but once you go in, you start here, and there's the other side there. They got a little box there. You can leave a donation if you want. And they've got a map. This is a lot like being on board the New Jersey. I mean, the map really didn't help. We just followed the little arrows on the floor, and restrooms this way, and welcome aboard. Just follow the little arrows. They got them all over the place. And we were in this open area here, and they had some displays and some other stuff. And then we just went down the ladder well and started just followed the arrows. And in some places you kind of went in a circle or half circle. So I took some of the pictures out of order. I would be on one side of the room, then I'd go through another exhibit, and then I'd be on the other side of the room. So when I edited this, I tried to move all the pictures together so you don't quite get a feel for how big the ship is or how wide it is when you're going through these decks. And some of the areas of the ship are blocked off. They've got cages and bars around them, so you can't get in there. Some of the displays are behind plexiglass. You can't get in there. Some areas of the ship are just blocked off altogether, so you don't have access. So some of these pictures might seem a little bit, you might not be able to see exactly what it is. That's because I'm trying to stick the camera through the grates and try to get a picture on what's on the other side. So just go down the ladder well. There was hardly any non-skid on this, so it's all worn off, whereas on the New Jersey, it was in decent shape. And one of the things I noticed right away once we got below decks was this beam right here. This beam is for a trolley that they would use to move ammunition around the ship. This beam is all over below decks. And I don't know if you remember the movie Under Siege.
Yeah, I remember.
So in the movie, they were cutting up this beam. And what they were doing was they were making a crane to hang off the side of the ship here. And so they could... to offload the Tomahawks onto this stolen sub. And I don't know if you know this, but the movie Under Siege was shot on board the USS Alabama.
Oh, I thought they didn't shoot it on the Missouri. Okay.
No, it was about an Iowa class ship, but it was shot on board and now I don't know, they might have shot some of the scenes on the Missouri or on some of the other ships, but the main film sequence was done on board the Alabama. You remember the movie Under Siege?
Oh yeah, the girl, Miss. Trying to remember her name. The character, her name. Something Tate.
So here's an example of a picture where I don't have information to go with it. This was a machine shop in here, and I thought I would go ahead and show that they had the ability to fabricate parts for different things in order to repair the ship while it was underway. Normally when you go through, there's a little placard and it says what it was, and some of the ones were out of focus, so we really may not be able to read them later on here, but this was one that was there when we came down below, and I'm not sure specifically what it is.
What I remember about that girl's character is she said she doesn't kill people and she doesn't date musicians. Other than that, that's what I remember about that. You
know what I remember about that girl's character?
Her boobs. Right.
That's what I remember.
Right.
So here we are. We're going further down the passageway, and you can see where. Let me see if I can zoom in here.
You mean you didn't pay any attention to any of the dialogue?
No, it's a Steven Seagal film. There's no dialogue. The knee knocker's still there, but in some places on the ship, they've actually cut the knee knocker out. So knee knocker is when you go through a bulkhead on the ship. A wall is a bulkhead, and this is a watertight door This door, if you close it, you can seal it, and you could fill this whole area with water, and the water will not get through. So these areas here are called knee knockers, and you're supposed to step over them as you go. Now, when you're running through, it's really easy to trip over and fall. You can really bust yourself up bad on board a ship. Well, if you live on board a ship long enough, you get used to it. So there are a few areas where they're cut out, and there's other areas where you have to step over. This was just like being on board the New Jersey. I felt at home on the ship, but
you would think they would paint. They'd paint the red stripe on the top of those things, so it'd help people, or yellow or something, so people would be more.
You don't always look down.
It's one of those enter at your own risk. So, but here's
HVS. You wouldn't believe it, but if you're in a hurry and trying to move quick, and the boat's moving left and right, and this way and that way, sometimes it might leave your head.
Right, that's why I was thinking a neon thing that would don't step on me.
Well, see, for the crew, they get used to it. So they just know to step over, and they know to hold on tight, and they know to look for certain things, and watch their head and do all kinds of stuff. But for somebody visiting the ship, I mean, it's still set up fairly well. You could still trip and fall and smash your teeth and do all kinds of stuff. But in general, though, I mean, you're not really running around down here or anything like that. But here's that beam again, and you'll find it in other pictures as we go. So they've got here they've got
Local 223, I've been on Old Ironside, yes.
Okay, yeah, you talked about the external. Were you the person that said this ship was called the Lucky A or the Lucky Ace?
No, I believe that was someone else.
Somebody else? That was Patrick, okay.
That's a one-way, whoops. My bad. Just trying to go down a one-way.
So you can see the watertight door here up close. And when you turn this handle, these levers move, and they seal the door. But they put this red padding here so that people wouldn't bang their heads. So, and the different frames of the ship are marked. This is so damage control can figure out where they're at, and when they're doing reports, and also so you know where you're at when you're going through the ship. Don't ask me how to read one. I skipped that class, and I never learned. I just know where the stuff's at. So you go this way, it's over here. You go this way, it's over here. So, but these really help because I mean, for the tour, this helped because at least know what we're coming up on, what's going to be on the other side of the hatch or around the corner. And you can see here's the bars I was talking about that they put in there so the public can't get in there and screw with stuff. But they've got some equipment that they would use. This you would put the dough in, and it would knead the dough. And they've got the rolling pins and their baker's tables. I mean, they're trying to make everything period correct.
And so right the bars weren't there during the operation of the ship. So the screens and bars and on all the blocked off. No, that wouldn't have been. This is just to keep the public out. This is me sticking the camera through the bar, taking a picture. So this here you would have an L shape kind of or an S shape kind of attachment on here, and you'd have your dough in there, and that would mix the dough around. We had those on board my ship. They probably still have the same things on board. It's just a really big mixer because you have to do everything in gigantic portions. So you're making, I don't even know how many loaves of bread or whatever it may be. So nesting compartments, mess tables set up in these areas for each meal, etc. I have the same problem when I make a big picture of margaritas, but I have to get the proportions right.
It says here, go ahead.
Oh, I was watching a documentary on the Alabama earlier today, and it was saying they used 90 gallons of coffee every morning, and they would also serve 100 gallons of ice cream every day for ice cream and ice cream floats in World War II. 100 gallons a day.
What was the complement of the crew during wartime?
2,500.
2,500 people. Yeah, that's a lot of ice cream. A lot of coffee. But yeah, the nickname of the ship was the Lucky A because it never got a single scratch in combat. It was never damaged in World War II. That's my research found out.
So it says here hammocks could be slung from the hooks you see in the overhead. I don't know if we're going to see those in the next picture. My guess is that would be for extra people, like when they were on Operation Magic Carpet, where they're using military ships to bring our people back from overseas. It's really not practical to use a battleship or a destroyer or something like that to bring ground troops. They're not troop transports. But since they've got so much space on board, they could probably do things like, during daytime, the galley was off limits, but at night they could put up hammocks, and that might be where they would have some of the people sleep.
Like if another ship got sunk, they might have to carry extra sailors from another ship.
Yep. True. So here you can see the galley. Nothing's changed. It's still like this today. It was in the 90s, so we got trays, bowls. There's a scullery where they keep all the pots and pans and all that stuff. There's that mixer again, making them big balls of dough. That I believe they used to keep milk or cream in that. They could fry right out here.
They put a mannequin baker.
Oh. Yeah, there's mannequins all over. There were in the New Jersey as well. So.
Well, those are fake hamburgers.
Yeah, those are fake. Yeah. These are fake oranges here. These are not. They got the plexiglass over here. You could. This is hinged, so my guess is that they probably had a prop rod, and you could close this stuff up, like under general quarters or when it was closed or whatnot. But I mean, some of these spaces look really open. They would not be this open. There's things missing whenever you go on board any of these ships, and you can see. Right here, you can just sit and eat. This on the other side, that's the turret. That's one of the main turrets.
That looks like an uncomfortable seat to sit and eat at.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the seats we had on board the Guadalcanal were not exactly the best, and you were so cramped that if you wanted to get up or sit down, you almost had to knock over your buddy's food to do it. But this is the turret actually goes from the main deck all the way down to the bottom of the ship, and where you see these half-round walls in 3 different locations on all the decks, that's where everything for the main turret was, because they've got the ammunition at the bottom and it works its way up, and the turret's got to be able to rotate and all this other stuff. So they got to make use of this space.
I must say the cruise ship that I was on had much more luxurious dining facilities.
I can't say that it's like being on the Love Boat. So here's some more. Right there. There's the turret. Okay, coming down through the bottom of the ship. But on the way down, what do they do with all this open space? Hey, I know. Let's put a tray here, and let's go ahead and just put seating, and then right behind is where you would get your chow in the chow line. So here's an area where you've got a hatch leading below decks, and they blocked it off. You couldn't get access to it. So. And here's another machine shop where you've got lathes and whatnot, and they're a lot like modern lathes. I mean, they're manual and everything. They're not CNC or whatnot, but I mean, machining is machining, and you can see they can still move ordnance through this area here.
Did they even have anything like the stabilizers they have on cruise ships now to keep and I imagine they have on some naval vessels, but back then did they have it to keep the ship stable? No, but there is something near the end of this that shows how they compensated for that. So It's a good question to bring up now, though. It's like a teaser or carrot or whatever, I guess, right? Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. More. So, even though the drawers and cabinets are missing and stuff like that, it's still in fairly good shape to give you an idea of the workspace that these guys had. And these are all over the ship. These, there's no rhyme or reason to where some of the stuff is. I think it's just wherever space was available, that's where they put it. And other stuff they try to keep closer together. So as far as I can tell, because I tried to zoom in on this one and I could not read it that well, this is a model of the Illinois class pre-dreadnought USS Alabama. And the Alabama that we're on right now is BB-60. Well, this is a model of BB-8, not the droid from Star Wars either. So it's a pre-dreadnought, and it served It was launched in 1898 and it was decommissioned in 1920. And there's displays like this all over the ship. I did not include every display that we saw in the video
I
here.
believe the saying was "Fear God and dread not."
There you go. I mean, I'm a sucker for battleships, older and newer. The evolution from the monitors was really just, it was something. And I know they were filthy and heavy and all this other stuff, but
Better than a submarine.
better than a submarine, yeah. And so here is what that actually looked like. Here's a picture of BB-8 USS Alabama.
Oh, it had the side ports for the guns on the side.
This is a lot like that protected cruiser, or the armored cruiser we went on in Philadelphia, the USS Olympia, which we'll do a show on that whenever we get back to Philadelphia and get to do the rest of the tour. When we were on board ship, it was raining and it's thunderstorm, so they did not allow us up on the main deck because of the lightning threat, but they did allow us below decks on board that ship. So I got a lot of good below deck pictures. So we want to go back to Philly. It was a real nice town to visit. And when we do, hopefully the weather is better. I can get pictures above deck, and then I can combine the two, and we can do an armored cruiser show. So look for that somewhere eventually. And if you don't like black and white pictures, here's the picture colorized through the advent of modern technology.
Colorized pic photo, it says.
Yep.
The bottom left there. Okay.
And
Squib, got a question for you. Back to the original picture there from the 1800s. What was the? Do you know why the paint scheme was white and gold? I know they called it the Great White Navy, but what was? Do you know the reasoning behind that?
it was white and red. It's white and red.
Well, the superscript looks like it's a gold or tan color.
Yeah, it is kind of tannish. I thought you were talking about the water line. Yeah.
No, I kind of get the water line. Why it's probably telling you, hey, that's where the water is. Normally it should be, I guess.
I don't know, but when we go back to the Olympia, maybe I should try to remember to ask, and I can include that.
Because I know a lot of those ships they were all painted the same. I mean, obviously, they're all painted the same now today, gray or dark blue. But I mean, I'm just wondering why kind of a white and gray tannish color was. I don't know.
I don't know. It was nothing that was ever taught to me in the military. It's nothing I ever looked up when I had done research on these ships, because I'm a sucker for military history, and I love naval warfare history, and the armored cruisers, the protected cruisers, the battleships, and even the monitors are my favorites. Even though I'm an air wing marine and I served on a amphibious assault ship that was a small flat top, I'm still. I mean, I would have volunteered for battleship duty if they were still active when I was in, but I don't know, but I will try to remember to ask when we go back to Philadelphia.
Cool.
Even though this is a pre-dreadnought battleship, this looks a lot like an armored cruiser, which would be one step down below. The paint scheme's the same, but I mean, as far as the main armament and all, it almost looks the same. So there is one example of a ship like this that is still in good shape in America. So here's another display, big Japanese flag. Like I said, all over the ship, they got displays all over the place. So there's a lot of good history to see in there. Pressing shop, people would think that if you're out at sea for months at a time and you don't see land and all that, you're going to be dressed up like a scumbag. Pirate. But that's not true. That's not true. You can get away with certain things while you're on deployment, but overall, you keep yourself kind of locked and cocked. So here they are. They've got everything to press the clothes, and the uniforms would have creases in them. Everything would be sharp. And I mean, don't get me wrong. There's certain uniforms that you wear, certain things that get dirty that are not really pressed. But then there's other stuff. You're gonna have your chief petty officers, your officers. Their stuff's gonna be pressed all the time. And to some extent, your enlisted guys, depending on what the uniform of the day is, your stuff it better be pressed and shined. And this is back in the day where you did everything by hand. There's another one for doing that. And this space was opened up. It makes it a lot easier to get through, but just don't think that this amount of open space is all over. This would have been full of all kinds of stuff in World War II. So here's the racks.
That's kind of funny you say about press and everything, because there's a when I was in I think I was still in basic training. We went to the store for some reason, and I was buying some cleaner for my suede boots, whatever the hell material it was on the outside there. I was buying some cleaner, and the drill sergeant got in my face and screamed at me and told me to put the effing boot cleaner down. We ain't got time for that shit.
It's an older thing. It's a older military. I mean, the uniforms today. Yeah, I mean, I wear a pair of modern Marine Corps issue flight boots, and you don't polish them. They're suede. Yeah, they're not polished. You know, but the flight boots I used to wear were black leather, and you polished them. Although there were crew chiefs and mechanics who didn't, because the boot polish would actually get onto the gray paint of the aircraft when you're climbing up on top of it, and you've got polished boots. You'd leave black streaks, and they didn't like that, so they let them go without polishing their boots. But I didn't climb up on top of them very often.
He like screamed at me because he didn't want me. It was regular boot cleaner. It wasn't even polish. It was just cleaner. And he pretty much told me to F off and put it down.
Well, I've seen Army and National Guard wearing their BDUs. In the Marine Corps, we call them camis, but they're, you know, the nomenclature is battle dress uniform. We press ours. We starch them. We press them. Some guys would actually take fishing line and put them in the creases and melt it so they had a permanent press. And I've seen Army and National Guard soldiers that their stuff was just washed, and it wasn't. There were no creases.
I just throw mine in the washing machine, and then when they're done, I hang them out to dry on the line, and then that's it.
They told us to never press or starch our ACUs because they said if you do it enough, they'll glow when you use night vision. They will be glowing.
Yeah. They told us that ours were, when they were made at the factory, they were treated with a chemical that would make us invisible to infrared.
But it washes off. It washes off over time.
No, the thing about them being treated to be invisible to infrared or glow in night vision, it's BS. It's just regular cotton. It's just real seriously, it is. There's nothing special about the ink they use in them, or nothing they treat it with, or anything like that. But it's just different services have different uniform standards, and also the uniform standards in the 40s and the 70s and the 90s and today are all different too. So, and plus, when you're on ship, quite frankly, in between battles and stuff like that, you've got nothing better to do. They'll have you press your uniform, patch holes in it, and polish all of your boots and shoes and whatever you've got, just to give you something to do. Honestly, it sounds stupid, but
no, it doesn't sound stupid. The officers always have to keep the enlisted men busy doing something. They're just doing nothing. That's bad.
If you're not cleaning or on some sort of working party doing something, and I mean, sometimes people they didn't care about that sort of thing because they needed something to do, but other times it was just a whole lot of I don't know, just trying to keep the guys from getting themselves into some sort of trouble or
How much trouble could you get into on a battleship? But okay.
Oh, I mean, a fight could break out. I don't know, whatever. But I mean, one of the things people do to pass times would be to eat.
So you put on weight if you ate too much ice cream. Okay, so but what kind of trouble could people get into on a ship? You were on a ship. What trouble did people get in?
I mean, you get bored, you start snooping around in a place you're not supposed to be, you don't know about what's in that space, and you get hurt because you don't know about something in that space. You start snooping around, messing with something you shouldn't, and you break something, and then, of course, you don't report it because you don't want to get in trouble, and then when somebody goes to use it, it doesn't work, and that's not good, or whatever it is. I mean, just people would get bored.
Gambling.
Would get bored. We did a little bit of gambling here and there. We did more gambling when we got off the ship than really on the ship. But yeah, there was gambling. I learned how to a little bit about how to take frozen fruit from the galley and ferment it. But the horror stories I heard about that, I'm like, thanks
I
for
was
showing
gonna,
me. I'll never use this.
yeah, I was gonna say bathtub gin.
I've seen some scary stuff when I was doing insulation work before I joined the Army, and we were on a Coast Guard cutter, and there was dudes literally hiding everywhere. Like, we were just working on an engine, and there was a guy, like, hiding in the space above the engine. And I was like, what are you doing up there? And he was like, they're going to make us rebuild. They make us rebuild the engines every 500 hours. I don't ever want to do it again. They're not finding me. All right.
When
okay,
they
don't. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
I just said, okay, don't join the Coast Guard or the Navy.
So when they secure you for liberty, whether you're on a ship or whether you're at a shore station, you go on liberty. Get the hell off the base, or at least get out of the barracks. Get away from wherever, you know, if your unit has offices or hangar or whatever it is. Just get away from there, even if it's just for a while. Just get away from there, because if you go, no, I'll go out later. If they need somebody for something, they're going to come into the barracks or into wherever your workspace is, and they go, you just volunteered for this working party, and next thing you know, you're on a working party. Even if you got secured for liberty an hour earlier, if you're not gone and they need somebody, you're just unsecured from liberty, and you're doing some job instead of out in town having fun with your friends. So if you're like, you know, I don't have any money, I don't want to, or I'm trying to save money, so I'll just stay on base for a while and eat here for free and sleep here for free instead of getting a hotel and paying for a restaurant. Get that. Otherwise, you're on a working party.
Yikes.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. I mean, when we pulled into Rota, Spain, the first time, I had never been to Europe, and we were on. One day you're on duty. The next day you're on sort of like a limited duty, like you're on call. But you have to stay on the ship. And then the third day you can go out in town. And on the third day, I didn't leave the ship. I just hung out. And my buddies are like, what the hell are you doing? You need to, you know, and it's like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a whole lot of money. Just get off the ship, you know? So it was like on day 6 that I got off the ship. So, there were a few times where I stayed behind at the barracks at a shore station, and that was just a bad idea. I got stuck on one job or another. But yeah, on the ship though, they do come up with things for you to do. It keeps the ship clean. It's supposed to keep your morale up. It's supposed to help build camaraderie. It's also, you know, helping you take pride in your ship and your uniform and everything else. But it's really just to keep you occupied. So the racks here are different than the ones on board the New Jersey. Now, the New Jersey probably had something like this, but because it was modernized, it had racks more like what I was used to when I was on the Guadalcanal, and it actually had mattresses and storage, and they weren't chained together. They were actually solid and whatnot. I didn't find a whole lot of solid bunks on this ship. I don't even think I saw any.
Nobody had any place to put any personal items or anything?
No, there's gear lockers. You can see them behind here. Let's see if I can zoom in here. You see those back there? Those are gear lockers.
Yeah.
So that's where you would stow your gear. But you didn't stow it underneath the mattress like on newer ships. And these had to be uncomfortable. I actually lifted one just so you could see the springs, because we had been on New Jersey, and I had the kids get in the bunks on the New Jersey. So then I had the kids get in the bunks on this, and they were like, oh yeah, big difference. But I lifted the mattress, and you see you're just on these springs, and it's a thin mattress. I wouldn't even call it a mattress. It's just a rubber pad with something in it.
Well, how old were the people that were sleeping on those things? Were they like 19 or 21 or something?
Oh, yeah, they were kids. But I got to tell you, if you're over 6 foot tall, these are not very comfortable racks, and it's just, but they had to do this for space. It was all about making space. So here they are, they're stacked up. They're only 3 high here. I mean, the ship I was on, we were 4 high, but we had, I mean, the bunks were a lot better, so. And you're going to see, here's some gear lockers. This is where you would store your gear. You're going to see in some of the working spaces, they're going to have bunks in there. Some of them are going to be folded up against a bulkhead, but some of the guys would just sleep in their shop. So here you can see, we were just in the berthing area, and then we're going to go through to a couple of these other locations here. So here's the barber shop. and you don't have people in the military that are designated as barbers. They just go, you, and you. You've now become barbers. And they hand clippers to guys who've never cut hair before. Well, enough screw-ups and you start to learn how to cut hair. So
It's not that hard. Just go,
yeah,
I mean, I use a wall, so, I mean, how difficult is it?
Look, I had my buddies cut my hair for 6 months. Some of them knew what they were doing. They figured it out and they got good at it, and some of them didn't. But here's the thing. They'd always close our barbershop. I mean, it's constantly closed. So if you had to get a high and tight every 5 days, how are you going to do it if the barbershop's always closed? So one of the guys that worked in a barbershop bought his own clippers, and he was doing haircuts in our shop for, I can't remember how much. We just pay him cash, and he was doing haircuts for all kinds of people because you'd never get in a bar. The damn thing was always closed. It's like, who's in charge here? Who's going to tell these guys, hey, you can't just shut down? I mean,
well, the Marines would turn into hippies.
no, see, that wasn't allowed. You couldn't say, well, I'm on ship, so I guess I don't get my haircut. You found a way to get your haircut. Some of the guys shaved their heads. Just, what the hell? We're going to be out at sea for 6 months, so who cares? But yeah, the barbershop was always closed. The ship store was always closed. The post office was always closed. It's like, do you people work? So.
Well, as long as the captain and the guy steering the ship knew where he was going.
They're government employees. They didn't work on holidays.
I was at it. There were a lot of holidays when I was on the ship. So here's the ship store. This is where you got. I don't know how they did it in World War II, but when I was in, you got paid on the 1st and 15th, and when you were out at sea, you didn't draw all your pay. You drew a certain amount of it. So you just told them, I want so much per payday, $40, $100, whatever it was. And the rest of it just went direct deposit into your bank account back in the world. So you would get cash from dispersing, and you could do whatever you want. Use it on Liberty when you went on shore. You could use it at the ship store, or if you were gambling or paying somebody to do a haircut for you or whatever it was, right? So you'd always had cash available, just maybe not a lot of it. In the ship store, they would sell things that they wouldn't issue you. So here's the hours. Let me see. They're hardly open. Look at that. Nothing changed. And here you go. Cigarettes. Lots of cigarettes and candy. Here's some shaving cream. Yeah, because they don't provide you with shaving cream, razors, soap, stuff like that. You have to provide that yourself.
There was a funny scene in 30 Seconds Over Tokyo where one of the bomber crewmen buys 10 cartons of cigarettes and some records for their phonograph player. And they asked him, what kind of cigarettes do you want? It doesn't matter. Just give me 10 cartons. And then they get the warning that they spotted a Japanese ship and they have to launch. He's trying to grab all the cartons and records.
Well, you can see how much counter space is for tobacco and then candy, and then somewhere in there you got toothpaste and shaving cream. But I mean, this will give you, here's some aftershave, and this is all stuff that they had on board our ship store. They sold tobacco and candy, and they sold writing gear, because back then you actually wrote letters. Oh my goodness. And they had ship stuff. Concept.
When was the last time you actually wrote a letter to somebody? I mean, man.
Well, I got a letter on the computer that I was thinking about printing and mailing, but
no. But I mean, when's the last time you took a pen or a pencil, wrote down something on a piece of paper, folded it up, put it in an envelope, and mailed it to someone?
1995.
1972. I don't know, something like that.
But in our ship, they sold writing gear, they sold candy, they sold snacks, they sold tobacco, they sold shaving cream, soap, things like that. They would have a few other toiletries like shower shoes, which are flip flops, and towels. They didn't sell uniforms on our ship, but they did sell things like a cap with the ship logo, a coffee mug with the ship logo, a belt buckle.
Chocolate bars? They have chocolate bars.
They had chocolate bars. If you needed a uniform, you had to go over to one of the other amphibious assault ships. We had 3 in our amphibious readiness group, and then we were attached to the carrier task force. And one of the ships had a uniform shop on there. So if you lost your cover and you couldn't borrow one off a buddy, or he had a tiny little head because he's got a small brain. You had to wait until all the ships were in dock, or you had to go to your staff NCO or your officer and say, "Can I get permission to fly on the next bird that's going over to what was it on? Was it on the Ashland or the it was either the Ashland or Shreveport had the uniform shop. Well, even then, what I heard from the grunts over there was the uniform shop was closed all the time there too, just like the ship store was closed all the time. So whatever you needed, you better bring, and if you don't have it, you better borrow it from your buddy, because trying to get that stuff issued is not as easy as what you would think. Let's see, what do they got here? They got
I think the number one requested item from GIs was socks. But
yeah. Here's the laundry. There you go. There's your mannequin. So you can see it's out of focus, but you get an idea. The laundry bags, we sell the damn mesh bags, and you put them inside the big bag. So the mesh bag had your name stenciled on it, and you Safety Clean used this giant safety pin to safety pin it shut, and you put them in these bags, and then these bags were thrown in the big machines, and then all the bags were put together, and everything was brought back to your workspace. And once a week, you did your laundry. See these big machines. Nothing's changed. Then we had this crap.
They do the same thing at the hospital, or the recovery hospital of the Pacific. You put your stuff. You have anything you wanted washed, you put it in a bag. You had to anyway. What a pain in the ass. I guess they just couldn't have individual laundry machines that everyone go and throw their stuff in.
When you're doing laundry for 2,500 people, you've got to do it that way. So,
yeah.
But here they had the pressing stuff, and then we had this on our ship too, and a fantail down below, right above the auxiliary steering. We had a setup like this, and they pressed the uniforms for the chiefs and for the officers, but the enlisted guys had to get an ironing board and do it in their berthing area. Well, if you worked in the laundry, you could slip somebody a couple bucks and they'd press out your stuff there where they'd press the officer's stuff. Or if you needed extra laundry done, maybe you had your head up your butt and you didn't get your stuff turned in the one day a week you're allowed to turn in for your department. Slip these guys a couple bucks, they'll throw your bag in there and get it to you back same day and stuff. And that's another thing you'd use your cash for, is to bribe people to do stuff for you. So print shop, you could make the ship's newspaper or print up anything you needed as far as paperwork for different departments for, maybe the orders of the day or whatever you had to pass around the ship. You can see they had lots of cameras. I think these are the type of cameras they would take up on the Kingfisher aircraft, in addition to something they might use up on the deck. They've got a dark room for developing pictures. It's dark, knock. Let's see here. Here you can see they've got their bird. They sleep in their shop.
Obviously, before the age of digital cameras.
Some of these cameras had to have been used on board the aircraft for reconnaissance. Not all of these would have been up on the flight deck.
Wow, that big one. I wonder how many millimeters that lens is.
Yeah, I didn't get any technical data on this stuff in here, but I was really surprised that
you got to send me that picture, because my dad's into photography. He's gonna. Can you email me that one?
Yeah, I can email.
All right, thanks. My dad's really gonna like that picture.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a camera freak. He has like
anything, but is
500
that an old
cameras.
style camera right there? Right?
Is that a Hasselblad? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea, but maybe my dad would. He has like 500 cameras, something ridiculous. He has 500 cameras and like 3,000 DVDs of old movies.
And you can see they have their berthing right there in their shop, and when they're underway, these fold up against the bulkhead, and you got more space. And then when they're off duty, they fold them down, and that's where they get the heave to and trice up. When you trice up a rack, you fold it up and secure it so it doesn't come loose when the ship's underway. So in the morning, they would blow the ship's whistle and they go reveille, all hands heave to and trice up. Well, even if you had a fixed rack, it didn't matter. That's what they said. So that's what they meant by it. So, and you see they've got their life preservers. They call these Mae Wests. They got their life preservers hanging up on their racks. And there's some chart in the dark room. I don't know what it is. Chief Petty Officer's Mess. So Chief Petty Officer is E7 and above. So they have a Petty Officer's Mess for E5 and E6, or E4, 5, and 6. and then E7 and above they'd have, and then the regular enlisted mess. And then they'd have an officer's mess as well. They just got these tables. Once again, this gives you the illusion to think it's a big open area, but this place would be really crowded. They just don't have everything in there. And they even have to sit on these goofy little tables and whatnot. You see right here, they cut the knee knockers out so you can get in and out of there. That would have been a bulkhead with a knee knocker. And there's you see there's a flag in there. There's probably a display in there. There were all kinds of rooms that were repurposed for displays. I'm guessing that these were to store refrigerated goods, possibly ice cream. I don't know. They had some weird dispenser over here. I don't know what it was. Water, hot water. I really don't know. Carpenter shop. Despite the relatively small amount of wood aboard ship, the carpenter's gang were kept busy with repairs to the deck planking, the 2 boats, and other work requiring a carpenter's skills. Now, we didn't have a carpenter on board our ship, but we had very little that was made out of wood. This is still back in the old Navy, so I could see how they would have a use for these guys. Here, their Maywests are hanging up, and they've got their equipment here. Here's their racks. So, you sleep where you work. And then, let's see here. End of red tour, continue forward to start green tour here. And that's where you use the maps of the ship that are hanging up from time to time to know which way to go. So different people would take the tours to different levels. So there's a follow the arrow. So here's the picture I had earlier showing the Kingfishers. This is the exact same DoD photo. Gunnery Aviation Office, USS Alabama, like coordination between its aerial and large gun units to ensure effective, accurate bombardment campaigns. So, let's see here. The ship's planes were used to coordinate accurate fire on enemy targets. They were sent out during bombardments to radio range and bearing information to the battleship. So, and I'm sure those cameras definitely helped them to do the damage reports as far as what was going on here. So it doesn't say how many Kingfishers they had, but I'm guessing they had 2 Kingfishers. It says later replaced by Curtiss Seahawks in April 1945. Says before the war ended. I'd imagine they. Let's see here. No, yeah, two Kingfishers and then later 2 Seahawks. So.
Right, Dusty's marching around in his. Try not to make too much noise, Dusty. Oh, there he goes. Hang on, I gotta mute him.
I don't think he knows his camera and his phone is on.
All right,
well, on where it's at. So you can see these guys have got everything in here for doing up their reports on you know, what reconnaissance is brought back, and they're sleeping in there too. See, these racks are triced up.
Typewriters. I'm young enough to actually have used a typewriter.
Yeah, or old enough, you mean? Yeah.
Well,
I've used a typewriter. Trash and incinerator rooms. This area was all barred off, so I don't have any pictures of it. But this one actually had an incinerator on board. Not all ships had an incinerator on board. And these days, they've either got a compactor and they crush it into a cube and dump it, or they burn it. When you pull into port, you're supposed to take all your trash and take it off the ship. So if you're in an area where you can't dump trash, then you have to stack it up in the passageways. And I mean, you got bags and bags of this stuff just stacked up all over the place. It starts to stink, and it's just. And then when you finally pull into port, they'll get a bunch of working parties together, and they'll just bring the stuff from below decks out to the dock and put it in a dumpster. It's
all right, so the problem with trash is that you can't dump it overboard because it leaves a perfect trail of where the ship is going for the enemy.
No. If you dump it over, well, okay. So they could find stuff in the trash that they might be able to use, like if somebody put some documents in there or something like that.
They could tell that there was enemy ships going through the area.
Yeah, kind of, but really what the dumping in the trash really was more about was if you're near your shores or your allies' shores, you don't want to dump trash and have trash show up on the beach and they'll be like, oh, thanks. At least nowadays. Maybe not so much back in the war, but
Well, I saw Run Silent, Run Deep, and the whole thing with the Bungo Straits and all.
right, and that's plausible that they could get information off that, but it's mostly about just not having trash that's marked U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps wash up on England's shore or Japan's shore or something like that. These guys are our allies, or California's shore.
They would have
or
been a
whatever.
lot more pissed off if they had stuff from the German Navy showing up on there. But there's nobody they could probably play with. But just for the record, how many Marines would be on a battleship like that, like the Alabama?
I don't know the Marine complement, but we are going to see some displays regarding the Marines serving on board the battleship. So that's another good question.
What was their duties?
So the Marines were operated some of the guns. They were also there for if they needed a boarding party, or if they needed a shore landing party, or if they had to guard prisoners. So Marines have traditionally served aboard Navy ships. And it's not just, I mean, nowadays, modern days times, a lot of Marines are just there in the amphibious assault role. But Marines have traditionally served as security or as naval infantry on board or gunning crews on Navy ships since the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
Here's another watertight door and a knee knocker, and here's a map. Let's see if we can see anything on this map. So let's zoom in here. So we came on board here, and we were walking around back here, and we went inside this turret, and then we came in over here. No, we came in over here somewhere, and we've been going through, and now we're one deck below. Let's see, will this let me move it around? And up here, this is part of where the mess area is, and then once we get down to the lower decks, you can really see how the ammunition moves for the main turret, and you can see a lot of the medical they've got.
Do you get to go up to the superstructure at all?
Say again?
Do you get to see the superstructure at all?
Oh, yeah. You know what? We got up top. That was one thing. On the New Jersey, they let us up into more up there on the New Jersey, whereas on the Alabama, they let you below decks more than on the New Jersey. So
okay.
we did some up there, but we didn't get into the battle bridge. So, and here you can see here's a flag from a destroyer, the USS Bradford, and the Bradford was, according to my notes that I have screwed up here at this point. Where did I put my notes here? USS Bradford. It's a Fletcher-class destroyer that served in World War II and Korea and was sold to the Greek Navy in 1962. But they had a whole room dedicated to stuff from the Bradford in here. I just put the picture of the flag up there, but that was it. Here's the passageway. You can see there's more gear lockers. There's plumbing all over the place. There's plumbing and ventilation all over the place, and just stuff sticking out all over. Motion picture locker. Oh, here we go. Casablanca.
That's like one of those better movies that was made. You just need to gain some more film noir appreciation, I guess.
Yeah, look, they get their own hatch with a porthole in it. So yeah, so they had a typewriter in there too. So I don't know, maybe it was they might have done some filming or whatnot on board, but it's probably more has to do with just entertaining or
film night,
maybe training films. Yeah, film night, stuff like that. What's going on the newsreel back then? They had newsreels, right?
So it couldn't all be like VD films and how to brush your teeth and stuff.
I don't know, man. I've seen enough of that stuff. But you see, here's the guy sleeps in his workspace. Financial Division Supply Office. Yeah, dispersing. So the crew's payroll, which amounted to over 400,000 monthly. Wow, dang! I don't think they kept all that on board the ship.
Well, it's not like somebody would steal it. There was any place they could go run off with it.
Yeah, I guess. Financial Division. So here you can see they got safes in here. This is all, of course, all blocked off. There's another May West hanging up there. You see, this is so. You'd see the little sign, and there'd be a placard on the wall, and you could walk in there and look, and that was about all you could see. But it just gave you an idea. Here's some safes. Here's some gear lockers. Another May West hanging up. They got their typewriter.
What model typewriter is that? That's an old one.
I don't know. Yeah, I can't tell. It's too pixelated.
An old typewriter from the 40s.
Yeah, I was just wondering what brand.
Officer's Galley. The Officer's 8 better. I don't know. Does it say anything in here about meal times? Does it say anything about they had to pay for it?
You had to pay for the meals?
Wait,
okay, so
why would they have to pay for their meals if you're in the military? You're supposed to get it.
okay, so when I was in, I don't see anything in this about it, but when I was in, the officers had to pay for their meals. Now they ate better. They got better food and nicer desserts and stuff like that, but they had to pay for their meals. They also got a monthly allowance for food. They got what they call comrades commuted rations. So they got a dollar amount every month to pay for their food. If they skipped meals or snuck down to the enlisted area to eat or ate MREs or went and bought some food at a commissary at a military base and just brought that on board and ate, they could pocket the money and keep it for themselves. For the most part, they just ate 3 meals a day like everybody else and paid for it. The comrades was not enough to pay for 100% of what it would cost for you to eat at a galley on board a ship or a chow hall on a military station, but it was pretty close. They automatically got comrades, whether they were married or not. Enlisted guys had to be married and living out in town to get comrades. So when I went to the chow hall initially, I got what they call a meal card, and I could go to the chow hall and eat as much as I wanted with that meal card. Well, when I moved out in town, I filed my paperwork and I got comrades. So they gave me, I can't remember how much a month it was to buy my own groceries. It was not to feed my wife, and it wasn't enough to really feed me. It wasn't supposed to be beer money or anything else like that. But I could take cash and go to the chow hall, and I think breakfast was 95 cents and lunch and dinner was a
So what happens if like some officer like loses gets faded in a poker game and he can't eat for the rest of his tour or something?
No, that's just it. That's just it. You're an officer. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to conduct yourself a certain way. So I don't know.
Officers play poker. One of them could have got faded. So
here's the thing. Here's the thing. If he lost all his money, comrades was only part of his pay. If he lost all of his money, I guess you go borrow some money or whatever. But I mean, really,
to eat? Oh,
I've never heard of anything that ridiculous. So,
well, I've known people that could lost poker games, but
well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I loaned my buddy $40 when we were in Turkey, and he turned it into $400. And before I could collect my money and maybe a little bit of interest, he blew it all and lost it. I'm like, you idiot! And I still had to wait 2 more weeks for us to get paid so he could pay me back, and he did. But I mean, he could have given me $200, and I would have
all right,
tripled my money.
Next picture.
No. I'm just saying, but no, officers, it doesn't say anything about them having to buy their, but when I was in, they had to buy their own meals.
It just seems to me in wartime, the military should pay for the troops' meals, but okay.
It's officers. They're not enlisted. Do you know, okay, let me give you an idea. At the height of my military career, I was making $900 a month, and I was an E3, an O1. An O1 was making $2,500 a month. I think he can cover his cost of his meal. Okay, so Yeah.
especially for 95 cents a day. You know.
Well, it's 95 cents for breakfast and like $1.25 for lunch and dinner. So you could go in there. So when I got rid of my meal card and I took the comrades.
What kind of meal does a buck? Well, in civilian life, meals cost more than $1.25.
Right, right. But when you go to the chow hall, you just go in there and say breakfast is served from 05:30 to 07:30. If you want to sit there for 2 hours and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and then stuff your pockets with oranges and boxes of cereal, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's not. I mean, I would eat 3 omelets easy. So I mean, I could make my 95 cents last if I wanted to spend my comrades on a meal.
Right, but I'm just saying that in civilian life, I guess you can't buy anything for $1.25. So
Right. So it's not like they were eating $40 a meal and they were getting $200 a month, and in 5 days they were out of. I mean, it's not like that. No, no, no. No, so I don't have any evidence here to show that they did that back in the Navy in World War II. So, but yeah, the officer's mess. Here you go. Here's your. What'd you say? How many gallons of coffee? 95 gallons of coffee. Here's part of it. So
I think he said 2,500 gallons of coffee.
no,
Well, that was
2,500 guys.
one pot. One pot would hold 90 gallons.
Oh,
Is what the cook said, and they had several pots.
So you can see they got all the cooking. They got grills and they got everything in here.
Those are some big grills.
Yeah. Well, they got to cook for a lot of guys. But you can see this is me sticking the camera through. That's how you're getting those pictures. No, follow. Turn around. And then here's where they sat. So this officer's mess or the wardroom. You see they get a little bit nicer plates to eat off of. They get a little bit nicer space to eat in than even like the
Navy
officers.
Navy plates. Think of the word. I'm trying to think of a word that I can't. For what kind of plates are those? Never mind. Keep going.
China.
Fine China.
There you go.
Fine China. Fine China with the Navy anchor embedded.
Just to remind you that they own you. Yeah, and a warrant officer is an enlisted who kind of is in limbo. He's lower than a lieutenant, but he's higher than, say, a sergeant major, or I guess that would be a senior master chief or something. So warrant officer is a good gig if you're an enlisted guy and you want to be an officer, but you don't have college or there aren't a whole lot of warrant officers in the Navy and Marine Corps. I don't know about the Army. One of the interesting things that when I was in was that the Marine Corps stopped letting its warrant officers be pilots, but the Army didn't. So there were Marines that were corporals and sergeants getting out of the Marine Corps to go enlist in the Army so they could be a warrant officer and fly Apaches. Warrant officer passageway. There it is. It's kind of out of focus. And there's another one out of focus. You can see this locker wouldn't have been for personal gear. This would have been maybe for damage control gear or firefighting equipment or something like that. There's another hatch. See, it's all blocked off, so you can't go down there and see what's down there. 16-inch turret barbette. So
what's a barbette?
A barbette would be the emplacement, the cutout in the hull for the whole mechanism of the turret, and it's what you see here. It supports the weight of the turret, which extends down to the lowest deck of the ship. So what you see on the main deck of the ship is just the top of the turret. The rest of it's a big cylinder that goes all the way down. So they have a round cutout in the deck for it. Let's see here. So you can see the shape of it. This is what I was showing you earlier, where they were seating for the mess hall. So you have to walk around it, and they're so massive, and you get an idea. The further down the ship you go, just how big these things are. Now here we go, the good part. So here's the Marine detachment there, and you're about to enter. Marines attachment. So let's see if it says how many had between 66 and 100 Marines on board the Alabama at any given time during the war. So security, guard duty, and ship's color and honor guards. and man anti-aircraft guns while on battle stations. Now, I think on the Iowa class, they manned one of the 5-inch guns. So, anything else? No. All right, let's forward. So when you get into this frame of the ship, Marine crew berthing area, Marine stores, Marine pressing shop, first sergeant, Marine's office. So there'd be a first sergeant or a sergeant major that would be the senior enlisted guy.
The Marines had their own pressing shop.
Oh yeah, because our uniforms are more attention to detail than the Navy. So you can see they've got their helmets that they wear when they're at their anti-aircraft guns. They got their May West. They got their racks. They don't have Navy gray. They got Marine OD green. So
they didn't have flak jackets when you were dealing with anti-aircraft guns.
I don't know if they did or not when they were. I mean, I would want the May West, or in my case, it'd be a float coat. But I'd rather have the life preserver because a flak jacket ain't gonna stop. Ain't gonna stop something coming at you from an airplane. So.
Well, yeah, but if a ship sinks, I mean, yeah, I guess if the battleship sinks, I mean, probably a goner. I mean, it takes a lot to sink a battleship, right? I mean,
yeah, it does. They've been sunk though, and I think mostly by aircraft. I think every time was by aircraft. Here's the thing. I remember as a kid somebody saying something about World War II bomber crews had a choice: wear a parachute or wear a flak jacket, but you can't wear both. And I'm thinking, I'd wear a parachute every time. What is that flak jacket going to do you? But
depends if you're being attacked by enemy fighters.
I'm just telling you, it's going to tear through the fuselage. It's going to tear through you. That flak jacket. I'd rather have the parachute. But let's see, it says the Alabama had 16 junior NCOs. NCO stands for non-commissioned officer. So a junior NCO is going to be a corporal or a sergeant. So let's see, 2 platoon sergeants, 4 sergeants, 9 corporals, and a field cook. All right.
Well, on the other hand, if the flak jacket, if your parachute gets hit, you get hit by some shrapnel or something, then it's not going to do much good when you jump out if there's a bunch of holes in your parachute.
Okay, look, you take the flak jacket, I'll take the parachute. I'll see you on the ground. So, okay. Here's a display showing they didn't necessarily have mortars on board for the Marines there, but they were showing the Marines in Guam in 44, and then they've also got an Iwo Jima display. So here's some of their field equipment.
They didn't have mortars?
On board the ship? What for?
For if they had to deploy the Marines on shore.
You know what? They might have had them, but I doubt it. I think this is more for a display. I would think that the Marines would have access to grenades at a certain point in the war, a bazooka maybe or something like that. I can't see them keeping mortars on board for if the Marines did get deployed on shore, because the battleship can just rain in 5-inch shells, right?
Well,
that, and you're only talking about 60 to 100 Marines anyways.
Yeah, but a bazooka is not a mortar.
And look, dude, I can
primary job was, like you're saying, ship security and other things like that. But why would you put your Marines that you only have to go on
there was
shore?
There was a mission. I mean, there have been missions that were
okay. Yeah, I can see a small group. Small group of guys, but
I doubt the Marine detachment on a battleship had mortars. But I tell you what, though, I mean, you say 66 to 100 Marines. Look, I can take an island with 12 motivated Marines and 2 corpsmen. So,
I'm not saying they didn't do it. Maybe some special mission or whatever.
They had troop carriers, and they had ships that were designed to launch the different landing craft. So, you had lots of ships that were loaded down with Marines that had all this gear. And I'm not saying that military ships they don't have an armory on board. They do, and they've got all kinds of stuff. And that scene in Under Siege where they fired the Stinger at the F-18 that was flying around. They used to keep Stingers on board Navy ships, even Navy ships that had anti-aircraft weapon systems. At a certain point, somebody says, "Why are we paying taxpayer dollars to have
I
this?"
thought they used the phalanx
They
on the
they
F-18.
tried to use they used the Sea Whiz. Oh no, I'm sorry, you're right. They used the Sea Whiz on the F-18. It was the Frog that was coming in with the SEAL team that they shot down with the Stinger,
Right.
because they managed to defeat the fire control computers for the Sea Whiz.
Yes, but that was from a submarine that they had the Stinger, not on the
No,
battleship.
they fired it off the deck of the battleship.
I thought they fired. No, he called Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote to Roadrunner because he needed the sub to shoot down the incoming helicopters. They had the Stingers on the submarine.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch the movie again. But I'm telling you, the Navy used to carry Stingers on board
Okay.
ships, on all kinds of different ships, and they're like, what do they need this for when they've got Sea Whiz, Sea Sparrow, and other weapon systems that they could employ? Why are we spending taxpayer dollars on this? At certain points, the military spends a lot of money and equips everybody with everything. And there's other times where they go, do we really need this? Do we even use this? Why are we paying to train guys to do this when we don't? So at a certain point, they recalled all those Stingers from the Navy, and reissued them to Army and Marine Corps units, because they were like, what do we need this for on board a ship? But so it's not implausible to say that they had mortars on board the ship. I just for the detachment on board the ship, I just don't see a need for it.
Well, I mean, I think, like you're saying, is a manned shoulder-fired missile. If your whole computer system goes down or a radar system goes down, you could put a guy out there on the deck and go, "Hey, he's that direction. Shoot at that plane,"
Right,
and that would make sense. And it would be some kind of a very smart, wise backup to have. I mean, yeah, you say it's a small chance, but hey, you never know.
Right, but when you're looking at your budget and you're going, do we really need this? So at a certain point, when you think the Russians are going to attack all your ships from the air in the mid 80s, yes. In the mid 90s, when Russia is gone and who the hell is going to attack us, and don't even come in with the North Koreans, why are we spending money on this? So
Space alien.
And what was the whole thing about? At one point, the Air Force didn't think we needed a Navy at all, and they wanted to cancel because they were just going to they had bombers with atomic weapons. So what did we need a Navy for, right? Well,
that was I remember hearing and reading that was an actual serious deal after war.
It actually was, because they were both fighting for the budget, and they both needed a lot of money in their budget. The thing is, they do a different mission. Sometimes they cross over, or they complement each other, back each other up, but they perform a different mission. So everybody can really justify their budget by just doing their mission. The problem is, when you're trying to get Congress and the president to approve money for it, they don't understand that.
They can't even approve a wall. What do they know? They can't. I mean,
that's true.
It's like I don't know.
Well, they didn't press this guy's uniform out, so he's on SAT. So I'm securing him from Liberty until he gets his head and his ass wired together. But yeah,
they probably are. But okay, next picture.
So here's a gear locker. Somebody decided to put a record player in there, and back in here we got a berthing area with a bunch of Mae Wests, and these are rifle racks. Let's see. Here's a tailor shop. They could go ahead and alter their uniform, fix them, whatever they needed. I'm telling you what, we had to make sure we look sharp, because we're the minority on this ship full of Navy guys, so we got to look sharp. So they got a sewing machine, all that stuff. So here's some rifle racks. More this out of focus, blah 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 blah. Here's the Marines up on the deck practicing. So I would think that they would be more likely to just be deployed with small arms if they were using them as a landing party or as a boarding party. And yep, we had our own pressing shop there, so we didn't have to wait for the ship's laundry to press out our stuff. We were locked in cockpit.
You didn't have to bribe the Navy. You could bribe another Marine instead.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And here it says that even though the
1903
was adopted in 36, it didn't see widespread use until 43. So, yeah. So the standard was the M1 Garand on board the Alabama, and here you can see all the rifle racks. They got them all over the place. Every Marine's got a rifle, so they're all over. Follow the arrow.
Now, this may sound like a dumb question, Squib, but would you guys actually practice shooting? I mean, on a section of the ship that was clear, or
Yeah.
clear off a section?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
that would have been probably pretty interesting.
Well,
I'm
I
sure it
mean, you
was
don't have to worry
outside, not
about
indoors, but
you don't have to worry about a backstop because it's the ocean. So
right, yeah.
you
I
can
was just like, no, I guess they just said, hey, all right, hey, just shoot at this target, and boom.
so you can set up a target on the edge of the deck, right, and shoot it. You can practice close quarter, engagements. You could set up different
Right.
things like that up on the deck, or you can toss a target in the water that'll float like an empty barrel, and just start plugging away at it. You wouldn't believe how many holes you got to put in a barrel to get it to sink.
Oh, I bet quite a bit.
And then we've chained vehicles to the flight deck and mounted guns on vehicles and gone to town. In addition, the Navy's got their own. They'll mount a Modus on a pintle mount on the catwalk, and they can defend the ship themselves with their machine guns. We were doing machine gun practice one time. We were in the Med, I think it was, and I think we're somewhere down near the Suez Canal or something, and we're in a shipping lane. So we got ships passing us, and we're passing other ships back and forth on this shipping lane, and we're just firing the 50 cal off the side of the ship, and you see this container ship coming up on us. And when he's about a mile out, we cease fire. He passes us, and when he gets a mile clear, we open fire again. And he was never in any danger. We cleared the guns and all that other stuff, and they went on their way. But I'm sure that there were guys on the deck, and they're hearing these machine guns going off, going, "Sir, it isn't a good idea to pass this ship." And then
Right.
nothing happens, and then right after they hear the machine gun fire again, and they go, "Oh crap," So, but yeah, out there, the ocean is your backstop. So. I
Well, I
mean,
was just didn't know if actually ever made a mistake and actually shot the ship by accident, or
well,
just
no, I mean, because you're going to put a target up on a stand or whatnot, and it's going to be, 6 foot off the ground or 5 foot off the ground or something like that. Or like I said, we just toss something that floats, a box, a barrel. Sometimes we take the balsa wood and steel wire frame liners that would go over the metal ammo cans, and we'd safety wire those back together, and we'd tie something to them, and we use those as kind of like buoys or the flotation devices, and throw something in there and shoot at it. And yeah,
well, and it's a constantly moving target too, so that'd be kind of like a pretty good test of your abilities. And
no, you're not really going to go, like, if the ship's really pitching, you're not going to be out there shooting. No. Because you also got people up on the deck, and they're not always wearing flotation stuff, or you just, no, you're gonna do it when you got ideal conditions. So they're not gonna have you out there and if they got a foul deck from bad weather or something like that, and going, all right, do it. Even though you'll go to the rifle range in rain and you'll be wearing your rain gear, yeah, they're not gonna risk the safety of the ship or the personnel. So.
Next picture.
All right, Marine
stores.
Yeah. So I don't know why they would have an import and at sea hours, because marine stores would be gear that you would need. So here, let's see. In this one, you can see more rifle racks out there in the passageway.
Because somebody had to be in that man it to pass out the stuff. I guess.
To issue gear, I guess, yeah, because this is all gear that you get your 782 gear. Here's entrenching tools. Here's mess kits. Here's canteens. Here's helmets. So here's another barbette for the turret there, and you're walking around, and here's a Iwo Jima display. So you've got like a mock-up of a pillbox with a machine gun in there, and
a woodpecker.
No, I think this is the one. I don't remember what type it is. Type something or other with the inverted mag. I think it is one that's kind of modeled after the Bren. And here's a Japanese naval infantry, I think is what they had on the island there.
So, white flag. Is he surrendering?
I doubt it. No.
Yeah. They just put a white flag there for.
No, that's his battle flag. So he's got his Arasaka with his bayonet. Yeah. Here it is. Another. Had that earlier. Here's the barbette. I mean, you see this passageway is a little bit more narrow than some of the other ones, but I mean, like I said, when you're down below and you're walking around this thing, you're going, damn, this is massive. So here we go. Samples, indexes, blah blah blah.
Surveillance
devices.
oven.
Hmm?
I was showing this display our a powder surveillance oven. An oven? Unusual thing.
Yeah.
Is there supposed to be a comma after a powder surveillance oven? Is that?
See, it's 65.5 Celsius. Who the hell uses Celsius? I don't even know how much that is. I would think you want to keep it dry, but as far as temperature,
I think
don't know.
Celsius water freezes at 0 Celsius, so that's like 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So back calculate from, so that's like the oven at a constant temperature of.
I would think it would be way over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Why would you do that? I don't know.
Neither do I.
So, I'm not sure what this gizmo is here. It says 20 millimeter wooden training device. So, something so they can train without actually having to fire live ammo or something. And here's all your different shells. Let's see if I can zoom in on this.
That looks interesting.
Yeah. So, small arms. Look, they even got shotgun shells in here. All the way up to your 20 mic, I think. Yeah.
I had just mentioned in our text chat that I picked up some zombie max ammo, which was at 1,600 feet per second, and most shotgun ammo that I have, like a Federal or Remington or anything else, is like at 1,100 or 1,200 FPS as opposed to zombie max. But it had only had 8 pellets instead of 9, so I assume they took out a pellet so they'd have more room for powder. And what's that?
This is 40 millimeter for the Bofors. So, I don't know. It says Waterbury Speed Gear mock-up. So it's either a mock-up of the tool or it's used for training. But here's your 40 millimeter ammunition. You see, there's the shell casing, but you see how big the shells are. I mean, they're pretty big. As far as I know,
they're all brass. Bofors, all brass.
Well, the cases, the casing is but I don't know if this is for some sort of training thing or is this for them to practice loading.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because the whole thing about I'm going to divert that whole concept just for a moment, because they used in World War II, they couldn't use, when the Manhattan Project got underway, they couldn't use, they were trying to create plutonium-235, or I think it was, whatever. And so they built these things called calutrons. And basically, they used, they needed either brass or silver to create big magnets to use. The first method they used to create uranium-235, and then but all the brass and copper was being used for ammo, so they had to switch to silver. So they raided the treasury, and they basically created these things called calutrons made out of silver to create plutonium for the first atomic bombs. Later they switched the method, but it's like it never went on the. If you look up the calutrons, it's really interesting. The treasury just basically was. I don't know if they raided. Basically, they raided the mint or the treasury. Just the government did because they needed the silver for the war to create the atomic bomb for the Manhattan Project. And so it was just really interesting. You could just look that up on Wikipedia or something, but or there's some videos on it on YouTube. But obviously, brass and copper were like high value items that because of all the ammo that was being needed. They had to all casings and bullets, and uh, that was a kind of important commodity. So I just found it interesting that they had to raid the treasury to uh, steal a lot of silver, and it was never actually put down on the books because it was a military secret. So a lot of silver disappeared from the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. Mint to create the atomic bombs, to create the plutonium, uranium-235 or whatever it was for the atomic bombs with giant magnets. And since you were talking about the brass casings and stuff, they couldn't use brass and copper because it was being used for ammunition. I mean, I don't know how much brass and copper they used for ammunition during World War II, but it must have been a hell of a lot.
They had a lot of materials that were strategic, et cetera, so they were rationed. And I mean, we were watching It's a Wonderful Life tonight, and they're showing scrap drives, rubber drives, all that other stuff. So
the run on the bank.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I'm talking about the World War II part, not the Depression part, where they're showing Bedford Falls in World War II and them recycling. And I remember one of the historical things about the posters that said, "Is this trip really necessary?" Because they didn't want people traveling and using up resources that they could be using to transport material or troops across the country. The only thing is, if the train is going there anyhow and it's not fully loaded, how much less fuel is it actually burning to get there? Not really that much. So I don't understand the whole, is this trip really necessary, unless it's you're chartering a plane to fly yourself.
Well, I think there was a lot of just consciousness of being at war that back then than we have now. I mean, I was like, back then they had posters like loose slip sink ships and stuff like that, and yeah, there was war rationing, but like we still have troops deployed overseas now, like in Afghanistan, and I remember right after 9/11, not that many years after 9/11, and somebody came. I was working out at Gold's Gym, and somebody they had the baseball game on, and they had a 7th-inning stretch, and somebody came up to me and asked me, how come they aren't singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game"? They're singing the national anthem. I was like, because we're at war. It's like, oh, he was like, oh yeah, right. It's like people don't know we're if our troops are deployed, they don't even know. I mean, I guess I don't know if did they have a draft during World War II? Because most people volunteered right after Pearl Harbor. I think almost everybody.
They did have a draft. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was in It's a Wonderful Life as well. But here's the thing. Back then, our nation was smaller. Our industrial capacity was smaller. I mean, things were just way different. Nowadays, everything's so modernized. Could you imagine if they said you only allowed to use your cell phone a certain amount of time a day, you've got to turn off your lights at a certain hour of the night, there's no more organic food at the grocery store, there's no more... I mean, people would lose their shit. But
yeah,
I mean, yeah, people have gotten soft.
Yeah, but I think it's just that the main problem is that our civilians are so detached from the military, they don't know that we're even at war with anybody. I mean, and it's just anyway. Let's go on with the Battleship tour. I'm sorry, we got diverted. But these things happen from time to time.
So these are spare barrels, and you see they're yep, and they're lined up in the passageway right outside the barbette. Why? Because that's where there's room, and that's what they do on board a military ship. They put stuff where there's room. That's why some of the workspaces are kind of oddly placed. It's because we need so much square footage, and well, this compartment's got it, so stick it there, or just some of the gear that is in the passageways. It might be right there for firefighting or for first aid or for damage control, or it might just be there because it was an oddly shaped area in the passageway, and hey, we got a corner, let's shove something over here. So it's not like on the cruise ship what you were talking about. It's space available. So here we go. 40 millimeter guns fired at a rate of 80 shots per minute, and barrels wore out rapidly. A number of spare barrels were carried as replacements.
Of course, cruise ships did serve in World War II. I mean, as troop transports, the Queen Mary was one.
And I'm sure that some of them probably had Bofors mounted on them for anti-aircraft. Although my understanding was that the Queen Mary had small ships accompanying her that were strictly there to shoot down planes. And she ran over one of them once.
I think their main concern was submarines. So that they just wanted to move very quickly and didn't want to stop for anything.
Well, yeah, they did a zigzag pattern, and that's how the Queen Mary ended up slamming into one of her escorts. The escorts were not as fast as the cruise ship, and the cruise ship's doing a zigzag while the escorts are going in a straight line, and she actually ran into one of her the smaller ships that were just bristling with anti-aircraft guns, and took out her own protection. So here's more gear lockers. Once again, how much space is available? Well, this passageway is oddly shaped because of a barbette. Look at all this wasted space. I know. Let's just line up gear lockers over here. So landing force equipment locker. So they did have gear if they had to land on board. An emergency landing force consisting of Marine detachments and 1 of 3 companies of Blue Jackets could be landed at short notice to handle local riots or uprisings or to preserve order in a disaster area. But I still don't know that they would have a mortar on board. Now, the whole thing about the Blue Jackets, the Navy guys, traditionally in 18th and 19th century Marine Corps history, when we landed on an enemy shore, like in the hymn where it says "to the shores of Tripoli," I think there were 5 Marines, and everybody else was either Navy or locals that we got to go over there and help us fight in Libya. So there have been a lot of times back in the day where they just had a boat and they landed on the beach, and there might only be a couple Marines in there, and the rest of them were Navy. So sailors would go and fight alongside the Marines, even though they weren't trained as infantrymen and that sort of thing. They'd give them a rifle or cutlass or whatever, and come on, let's go. So
cutlass.
yeah, whatever they had, back in the day. Now, I remember when we went to train with the French Army, we had 2 Navy guys. They were ordnance guys. So they worked down in the ship's magazine, and they would bring up they would help us bring up the ammunition from the magazine to load the aircraft. And on occasion, they'd actually load the aircraft with us, not because they had to, but it was something fun to do, because otherwise they were more or less just stacking bullets all day long. When we were going up to the French Alps to train with the French Army, they were like, "Ooh, we want to go." And our ship was just going to go over to, it was Italy or Greece, to be in this formation of U.S. ships there for some sort of, I don't want to call it a parade. I don't know what you would call it. Some sort of event where they just needed us to look pretty, right? So these guys weren't necessary to be on the ship for that. And
honor guard or something like that.
Yeah, like an honor guard thing. So they were like, "Hey, I know, we'll check a couple M14s out of the armory and join you guys." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure," And it wasn't that I didn't want my buddies to be there with me. You'd be like, "Yeah, come on, it don't matter. You're in the Navy, come on with us." But really, I was going, I get to shoot an M14 finally. And then their CO wouldn't let them. Her officer in charge would not let them go have fun with us. And I'm like, "Oh man!" So there's my one chance to shoot an M14, and I never did. So here's the gear. Now, I see helmets and maybe some comm gear in here. I don't see any weapons, but yeah, it's a mess. Somebody really needs to get in there and clean that up. So here's the post office on board ship. Letter writing is very important. You write to Susie back home and hope that she's not dating Jody. And here's a mailbox. There's actually a couple of these on board the ship where you can just drop it in there. 20 millimeter clipping room. So you put your 20 millimeter cartridges in the magazines that they would use, and these things fired so fast. They needed to have these things loaded up. So here you can see, here's these drums, and here's your link delink tool, and probably those are the tracers. So you'd have AB, AP, AP, and then tracer, every 5th one a tracer, something like that. You could probably set it up whatever way you wanted. And I'm sure they had different kinds of ammunition, so they might have some of these things loaded and marked for whatever they were. You see, they would have had pallets of ammo cans, and they'd been in this room just loading them up when they had downtime. There's the hatch for it. Let's see, and then follow the green arrow and go down below. Radio Central, Sick Bay, Engine Room, Main Plotting Room. So once you get down here, there's a caged area, and you can see back there's a bunch of stuff. It's damage control. There are compartments all over the ship that when they go to general quarters, you might be a cook, you might be a clerk, you might be whatever it is your job is. Well, guess what? Now you're damage control, and you'll go to your...
This ship never took any damage, but...
well, yeah, but still, you've got to, I mean, the ship, I mean, it's not necessarily just in war, too. There could be a fire on board ship. There could be anything. But some of these people have a collateral job, which is to do damage control. So they know how to fight a fire or shore up some things. Or, I mean, there are people on board ship that do repair work that's their primary function. But they have these damage control stations all over the ship. If you take a hit to the ship in the back and all your stuff's in the front, it's not going to do you any good. Or if that section gets taken out and you need damage control equipment and you can go up one deck and there it is, then there you go. So it's just a display area showing there's a hard hat and some other stuff. These might be controls here to shut watertight doors for all I know. I'm not really too sure.
You know, that recent film that I saw, Dunkirk, they had some scenes where you got the feel of what it was like to be in a ship that was under attack, and it was scary. I mean, you'd be sitting in a room with a bunch of guys that were in a mess hall, and you'd hear a loud boom and a bang, and an alarm would go off, and all of a sudden your compartment starts flooding, and it didn't look like fun. And there were some pretty, I thought, I don't know if they were realistic, but it looked like being in the Navy wasn't all. Like, it wasn't necessarily the safest place to be. Maybe a battleship might have been a lot safer, but tin cans, not so much. Or troop carriers.
Well, the thing is, in World War II, there weren't a whole lot of safe jobs in general. But, I mean, somebody might go, well, the Navy, they don't train as much as the Army. Well, the Navy... you know, they get to travel all over the place. So the Navy, they're on a ship, they don't do anything. That's not necessarily true. And I mean, granted, we don't have these massive kamikaze aerial attacks like we used to. But I mean, look at the USS Cole. It was in Liberty Port, in an Allied port, and two a-holes on a little raft killed these guys while they were eating breakfast. And look at the Iowa had that turret explosion. I thought they said that somebody was committing suicide or something and blew up the turret, right? And they were underway. Or look at the Forrestal, and it had the Zuni rocket go off and hit that aircraft, and the whole damn flight deck went up, and all these people died. And fire is one of the biggest dangers on board a ship. So there are a lot of things that could happen in peacetime, or when you least expect it. It's easy to get hurt or killed on board a ship, and there's limited medical facilities. I mean, it's probably better than what you might expect, but if it's something really serious, they're going to have to try to get you out there. If you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, it's not like the helicopter's only got so much range, right?
Well, in Dunkirk, it was just a matter of, will you even be able to get out of the room you were in? Because there's like 100 guys in the room you're in. And everybody tries to get out all at once while the compartment is flooding and the ship is sinking and everything's tilting the wrong way. And you don't even know which way is up anymore. And it's like...
That's just it. The power goes out, the ship starts listing, you're disoriented, you don't know where you're at. Maybe a hatch has come loose and now you can't go through that area. You've got to go further, forward, aft. Whatever it is, it's flooding, people are panicking, and all you're trying to do is get out and then go, the ship sank in 8 minutes. Why didn't everybody get off? You're kidding, right? So yeah, it's more dangerous than you would think, and that's the illusion is, oh, I'm going to join the Navy, and I'm just going to sit around in an air-conditioned ship and eat food and screw off, and then the damn ship catches fire, and where are you going to go? Into the shark-infested waters? Be my guest.
Okay. Yeah, I just had to bring up the movie Dunkirk. Sorry. Anyway, what's this?
Control panel for something. Once again, it could be watertight doors. Really not too sure. They can call up to the conning tower and ask them what to do. So follow the green arrow. Go down
Is
here.
it called
Now
a conning tower on a battleship?
yeah. They've got a bridge and see, that's just it. They got a fire control tower behind the bridge, and that for me is kind of a conning tower. I mean, the conning tower. I found multiple terminology for different structures on board the ship. So
I thought conning towers were submarine only, but I guess they'll show you what I know.
well, I mean, the conning tower is in the sail of the sub, right? So is the conning tower in the fire control tower of the ship where the battle bridge is? That was part of the problem. Was I found different terminology for it. So maybe it's not even called a conning tower at all on board a battleship, because I found the control tower was called a conning tower, a fire control tower, and the superstructure. It's like, well, the whole damn thing above the deck is the superstructure. So you can't just call the tallest piece, So, limited time and limited internet research here. So I think we're going down to the engine room. We are. So some of the pictures are out of focus, but the reason I left them was just to give you an idea about everything that's down here. Now, in the New Jersey, we did not have access to the engine room, but I think this is in engine room 1 on board the Alabama, and you just walk around in a big maze. It's kind of really neat. There's no flow to it. I mean, you're just, let's go over here, let's go over here. So here's a turbine engine.
Looks like a lot of steam-powered pipes in the first picture.
Yeah, and they've got to bring in fresh air and everything else, so this is number 1 of 4 machinery spaces. The 2 turbines drive the starboard outboard propeller shaft. Each set of turbines and 3 other machinery spaces drives the propeller shaft. So, and 2 440-volt AC generators. Let's see here. This is better quality, but yeah, look at all that. I mean, it's nuts what's in there. So maybe that's why they don't let you in the engine room in the New Jersey. Maybe it's just way too much stuff. It's too busy down there. But you can crawl around in here for a while and just, you really don't know what you're looking at, but there's all kinds of stuff there. So
there's some kind of steam control turning with that white thing, whatever that wheel is there.
Yeah. Put some fresh air in there. This could be one of the generators. I mean, I'm really not too sure.
Well, what would go back to that last picture? Just that last one. Now, what are those 3 indicators there on the black thing?
You got me.
Pressure.
Could be
some kind of gauge on the bottom square one looks almost like a clock, and the 3 round ones look some kind of pressure gauges, and it looks like a stop and start button on the bottom left there.
It could be. Honestly, I don't know.
All right.
I'm not a turbine tech. I'm not a boiler tech. I'm not. I mean,
so the technology is just what kind of fuel did it use? Diesel?
No, I think it used fuel oil.
Fuel oil?
Yeah, I think it used fuel oil. Yeah, more gauges, more steps. Like I said, you can just walk around in a maze down there.
You know, I don't understand how come the price of oil keeps falling through the bottom of the floor lately, but I just filled up my gas tank. It was $3.67 a gallon. It's like, must be a Hawaii thing.
Well, yeah, you got to have everything shipped out there.
Yeah, Jones Act. I don't know.
Let's see if we can zoom in on this one. I think this is the last one from the engine room. So,
what's that gauge say there?
Steam, superheated steam temperature.
Oh, the temperature of the steam.
Superheated steam temperature. Yeah.
850 degrees Fahrenheit.
I mean, that's some serious pressure.
So the temperature and the pressure, pounds of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, well, at that temperature, you're talking about you're gonna have to have some some real serious stuff to contain that. I mean, that's. Whew. So, all right. So next we get into the ship's magazine, and this is actually what you would put the powder in, close the hatch, and it's going to go up the chute to go topside to the guns. See, there's another one. They're all over the place down here. 5-inch ammunition hoists. So these take the projectiles and powder charges up to the main deck for the 5-inch guns. 5-inch 38 caliber Mark 12 guns, which it's got 16 of.
I would hope that the powder room has heavy armor around it.
Yeah, well, this is down at the bottom of the ship as well. So
yeah.
here's a better view. Come on, work. There we go. So you can see the 5-inch guns go below deck, and here's the chutes that run everything up. So they've got the shells stored in canisters, and they've got the powder bags, and they're putting all this stuff up. And you can see that below they're getting it all ready, and then they send it up and load it. So this is a much smaller version of the main gun, where they've got a couple decks of stuff where they're preparing it. Come on, computer, catch up. There we go. So here's some more of these. 5-inch powder hoist. The endless chain ammunition hoist were...
So there's basically 3 levels of different people working to get the ammo up to the guns, basically, to do the shooting.
Yeah. So there's more than like 2 guys up there just loading and firing. I mean, some of these gun crews might consist of dozens of people. Here's some more. You see they're all over the place. And here are canisters that carried the 5-inch shells. So they're inside metal cans.
How much did they weigh?
I'm not sure, but I bet you probably 2 guys could handle one of these things. So they're all in metal cans. And these aren't really much different than the metal cans you would find a mortar round in, or a rocket warhead, or like a tow missile or something like that nowadays. Here's some more. Here's that rail I was talking about. They're using the trolley. They got a trolley on there, and they use it to move ammunition around. There's from out in the passageway, you can see some of these things. Another damage control section of the ship, and you can see they've got maps so they can figure out where they're at, where they're going. Follow the green arrow, go down even further. The intercom room. So in here, I suppose this is just communication central for the whole ship. Why they put it down here? Maybe it's to protect it, or maybe it's just because that's the only place they had room for it.
So is there a big patch bay there, or to patch in all the intercoms?
I'm guessing that this back here is that, but it was caged off, so we really couldn't see. I mean, this is me trying to stick the camera through, and you can see there's electronics in here.
Yeah, those look like power cables, though, not audio cables. I mean, tiny tel patch bay. What kind of patch bay was there in there? Is that all I'm asking? But that's because I used to work with a patch bay, so.
Yeah, I know. You sound like conversation for one. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are not.
Sorry.
These are. Doggone it. Yeah, I might have got this part out of sequence. So these are for. This is part of fire control right here. I made myself
sprinkler system. Sprinkler system.
No. For firing the guns, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah.
They look like those heads for sprinklers.
No. Fire control is directing fire and maintaining fire and all that other stuff. This is a computer.
Why do they look like sprinkler head attachments, though?
They don't. Look closer. Those are handles. HVS?
Yes. A handle is a handle is a handle. I guess, but it looks like sprinkler handles. But they could have. It's a handle. Is a handle. It doesn't matter.
So this here is called a Mark 6 stable element. What is a stable element? Well, it's part of the fire control computer. And this in the back is a Ford Mark 1 fire control computer. These are electromechanical type computers. Here you can see this is where they directed fire or sent the information so they could properly direct fire. And this is way down below. So here you go. This is from a Navy manual. So your gun director's up here. This is your radar and ranging equipment above. And it goes to the stable vertical, which has to do with the ship pitching, rangefinder, how far it's supposed to go, and eventually the information goes through the computer, and people are handling all this. It's not a computer like what you're thinking of today where you just click a button and the machine does everything. These are people constantly doing inputs, and they're using charts and everything else, and they send this information to the turret, and they're able to direct fire. That's not just for the main gun, that's also for the 5-inch guns, the secondary armament. So
they had the Matrix on last night, and I was watching it. It's like, oh, computers.
Yeah, these are old-timey mechanical computers. I don't even think these things had vacuum tubes. So this is called the main battery switchboard, is what it's called. And I'm guessing this probably has something to do with the inputs that they put into these computers to direct fire, because you move the gun a little bit this way or a little bit that way based on the conditions, and it changes the trajectory.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They had that little stable thing with that they had to know what exactly how the ship was pitching on the deck, so they can aim the guns properly. Yeah, in that diagram.
Here's more.
Ooh, look at those old Western Electric style tubes on the tube monitors on the upper left.
What, these?
Yeah, those two white things. Oh, yeah, those are like Western Electric meters.
Yeah, it's an analog meter for something.
Well, it looks like the communication center. Another communication, because it looks like a hatch.
I think that's still in fire control, I think.
Well, they had to talk to people.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're calling up to the turret and whatnot. There's a ladder well. All right, this has to do with what you were talking about earlier. I can explain this here shortly. So next we're going into the main magazine for one of the main guns. Look at all these shells. Look at them.
Big ass. How much do those things weigh?
Oh, I think the 16-inch shells I think they're in the 1,800 to 2,300 pound range.
Wow.
So here's that I-beam for the shuttle, for the trolley, for moving ordnance, and there's a watertight door for something. There's probably gear behind there, something. This is looking back in. You can see the green arrows telling you to come into the magazine. Once you're in the magazine, you can see it's just packed with shells. And there's different kinds. One of them's high explosive, one of them's armor piercing. There's an explanation of that later. And I don't know if this is part of the equipment that they used to prep them before they sent them up, how that worked. So we're going to go even further down. So here's, just go down this way, and there's they stick shells wherever they can. And down here you can see there's bags of powder. They put them in a lift, and they send it up to the up into the gun. And
so what kind of powder is it?
I don't know what they use for powder, but they have to use a certain amount. So they can't, if they use too much, the shell goes too far. If they use too little, the shell falls short. So I don't know what they use, but the whole bag gets burned up and everything in the explosion. So that's another thing they have to calculate. How much powder versus the weight versus the distance versus everything. So there's a lot involved. And they just put what they need in here, and it gets sent up top. I'm not sure what those are. I don't know if these canisters were, if they put the shells in there, how that worked, how exactly they got them up, because this is for the powder. these canisters were holding some of the powder. You can see this stuff pretty well in here versus on the New Jersey. You can't see any of this stuff, but I didn't get a detailed explanation on this stuff. And this is me looking down over the railing. You can't actually go down in there and start messing with it. There's a really good view. There's 3 powder bags ready to go. And this is to go somewhere else in the magazine. There's a blurry picture, but lots of shells. Okay, so let's see. For the first time, new visitor on Battleship or any warship can now able to go inside of a 16-inch gun barbette. Let's see if it has anything to answer any questions.
Mark 6 guns. So those are like the biggest naval guns ever, right? I mean,
diameter-wise, no, but as far as
7?
No, the Japanese had larger diameter guns, but the shells wouldn't travel as far, and they were not as accurate as us.
Right. So those are the biggest U.S. Navy guns. Then.
Yes. Here, throwing a 2,700-pound projectile, so it's heavier than what I said. Let's see. Visitors now able to enter number 2 barbette from the 3rd deck level by simple walkway. Yeah, probably because they cut some stuff out of the ship. 90-pound powder charges. So the powder charges are 90 pounds each. Hoisting equipment, and what else does it say is down here? Each turret, each cylinders, etc.
You'd need a lot of hoist equipment to hoist a 1,600-pound shell.
2,700-pound shell. 2,700. Yeah. So let's see. Here's another passageway around the barbettes.
Did they have 1,600-pound? That you said they had HE and armor piercing. Do they have like smoke shells too, if they needed to make smoke?
Not on the 16-inch guns. I would imagine they probably got something like that on the 5-inch where they can either illuminate or white phosphorus or something like that. They probably do.
Oh, I meant smoke, like. Okay.
Yeah, not on a 16-inch. No.
All right.
So dispensary. This is where you get your pills from. They still call it a dispensary today. Dispensary medical stores.
I just went to Walmart to pick up my pharmacy refills.
Yeah, when you go to a naval hospital or when you go to sick bay on a ship, it's called a dispensary, not a pharmacy. So that's all it really is. See, there's a mortar and pestle, and the pharmacist mate's in there. See, all this stuff is behind plexiglass, so couldn't get in there to see everything. Here's another passageway with some bulkheads and whatnot. Surgical dressing room. So this, I'm guessing, it's not a full surgery. It's probably for minor wounds and things like that. Surgical dressing station. Yeah, they patch you up and get you back into work. And then the operating room. This is out of focus, but I wanted it there to kind of explain that where we're going to next. So all this stuff is a medical section that's down below. So
did they have how many doctors did they have on a ship that size?
Let's see
One.
if it says. Let's see if it says. Does not say how many doctors they had on board. No, it doesn't say how many. And I don't know if there's a Navy regulation for the ratio. But, I mean, you're only going to have a few doctors anyhow because they're going to be officers. Everybody else is going to be non-commissioned officers. But, I mean, most of the corpsmen I met were pretty proficient. I never felt uncomfortable around them like, they didn't know how to do their job.
Corpsmen aren't doctors, though. I mean, that's why I asked. Maybe there's only one. I don't know.
Yeah, you got to understand, though. And if I get shot up and all I got is a corpsman, I got a better chance than if I got, with some of the civilian facilities. I mean, these are guys that they're smart, they're dedicated, and they're brave. So,
right. Well, I mean, I've been in emergency rooms, and they're dedicated, they're smart, and they once you hit an emergency room, your chances of surviving are pretty good. So obviously they don't have to, go in with the fighting troops. They're doctors. They hang out in an emergency room. I kind of respect what they do.
Main sick bay. Now, this is where you would go if you're not feeling good that day, or just pretty much anything. General practitioner office. How's that? I'm trying to translate it into civilian, and that'd probably be the best way to explain it. See if it says anything about the number of doctors on this. No, it does not. So they got some beds in there, and they got equipment. They got, let's get a close up of what's in the cabinet. They got a bone saw.
Hope you don't need that one. I mean, you probably don't want a corpsman doing an operation if you have a choice. I mean, I saw Destination Tokyo and all, but
yeah. So because the battleship's bigger, and because it's got a bigger crew, it's got a more extensive sick bay with operating rooms and everything else. Your smaller ships are going to have they're all going to have a sick bay, but how extensive you're going to have as far as how many beds, how many doctors, and how much equipment. Our amphibious assault ship, part of what it was tasked to do was to provide a better medical facility than some of the surrounding ships, so that we could take on wounded Marines, or if one of the ships near us did not have adequate medical facilities, we could cover for them. So we actually had a really decent sick bay on board our amphibious assault ship.
Did you have a full-on operating room?
You know what? I only went back there like once or twice. What I saw back there, I suppose they could do operations, and we had plenty of medical people on board, but
you know it if you see it. It looks like an amphitheater with 3 lights, and it's a gigantic room with 3 big lights that I mean the size of searchlights that are pointed like right at the bed.
Maybe in a civilian hospital, but maybe not on board a ship. I mean,
well, an operation is an operation. They need lights and everything.
This is the operation room on board the Alabama, so.
They got 1 bright light at least. It looks like maybe 2, because I can kind of see the glare from the one on the left, far left.
The only surgery that I don't count stitches as surgery. So the only surgery I know about that happened on board my ship was having tonsils removed. That's not even surgery. Or I think somebody got a vasectomy. So that's about it.
But you could. Yeah. I mean, didn't anybody ever get shot? I mean, what do you take? A gunshot wound.
Those guys are already on land. They got facilities on land. You're only going to medevac them back to the ship if there isn't ample facility on land.
Wait, so you deployed to Somalia and you're going to assume that there's some medical facility there?
Dude, we had Air Force guys over there. Those guys were all hooked up.
Okay. I mean, I guess it's not. I guess a hospital ship is a hospital ship, and a battleship is a battleship.
Our ship wasn't a hospital ship.
I know. But I was just wondering
how we didn't have one. We didn't have one attached to our battle group anyhow.
Dental offices. I don't know if I want to see this.
Okay, so I can't tell you how many doctors they had, but they had 3 dental officers, at least 1 a dental surgeon.
Oh, God.
There you go. Look at him. He's got his legs crossed there. He looks like he's dancing a jig, whatever. He's happy. So, yeah. There's the dental offices. Look at that. They got 1 bright light. They got the little thing for you to spit in. I'm sure they got the drill. Yeah. Just drill your isolation ward. You got to have this. So, look at that. They don't even want the germs to get through the window. So you look inside the isolation ward. This is where you put the people with malaria, right? They got checkers.
Malaria it's spread by mosquitoes, not by will
Hey,
be.
I don't know, man. All right, then these guys got the clap. I have no idea what they're.
You don't get that by just talking to somebody or walking around either. You put guys with a clap in the isolation ward, okay.
I don't know. We did.
You
I don't.
just put crazy people in the isolation ward. I mean, if they have like, I don't know what you would put isolation in the isolation ward. If you've been in a hangout, too many gun channels hangouts, then they put you in there. All right.
So let's see. Well, let's see what it says here. Infected crew members, such as diphtheria, influenza, mumps, lice, real good, meningitis, and tuberculosis. So there you go.
Right. Tuberculosis and the flu, right? That's dangerous. That could spread but yeah, not malaria. I mean, put the mosquitoes in there if you can catch them.
Right. Moving right along.
I was just thinking of something that you got to take pills for. They give you like the whole giant pill bottle for malaria. The side effects are worse than malaria.
Oh, what you do is you take your malaria medication, and then when you come back stateside, you go and donate blood at the Red Cross, and you don't say anything about it until after they've drawn the blood.
I saw something like that in World War II. Since the World War II ship, they had a pill for malaria because they had to come up with something because like over half the people half the soldiers were down with it, but it was so terrible that nobody wanted to take it. So they would actually have to have medics, corpsmen and whatever to like check and force everyone to take it. You know, they'd have to line up and they would watch people take it, because nobody wanted to take it. But it was like if half your soldiers are down because of malaria, or 80%. I think like the Japanese army, it was like 80% of the people were down with malaria. I mean, it wasn't the bullets; it was the malaria that was killing everyone, all the Japanese soldiers in Indonesia. So yeah, you'd be surprised on medical stuff was pretty important. Anyway,
look at this. We can develop X-ray film in here. We're so advanced.
World War II X-ray. Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Irradiate the way the X-rays they used back then. The machines probably irradiate everyone.
So here's the answer to your question earlier. USS Alabama's 6 flooding stations were located on this deck, just above the waterline. The main function of flooding stations was to counterbalance the ship when weight was shifted during normal operations. These operations included refueling, loading of supplies, or during any ship action that resulted in a weight imbalance. Now, I realize these aren't stabilizers for rolling and pitching, but this is as close as they had to stabilizers back then. Flooding stations used seawater to fill the empty compartments, by means of counterbalance, etc., etc. So they did not have stabilizers. That was not common, or that wasn't even invented at this point. But they did have a way to balance the ship if it was either damaged or you had too much weight on one side. So that's what these valves are for.
Okay. Did your ship that you were on have stabilizers?
No. My ship was built in 1961. No. Look, dude, cruise ships are not... Cruise ship wouldn't last 5 seconds in a war. It wouldn't last. They're meant for comfort and to take your money. That's all it's meant for.
Well, why would anybody target a cruise ship? There's nothing on it.
I'm just saying, you can... Stabilizers are great, but, I mean, I'd rather have armor, so... Yeah, so they did have a way to...
I'd rather have stabilizers so I don't throw up.
No, you get your sea legs. You either get your sea legs or... Yeah, you really don't have any choice. I don't have a problem being on a ship anymore. They told me, they said, whatever you do, don't throw up. Whatever you do, don't throw up. This is, if you start to feel sick, go down to the galley and ask them for some bread. They'll give you some bread, and just tear it off in pieces and eat it a little at a time. It'll soak up your stomach acid. Eventually, your body will get used to it and you won't do it. Well, I went and got bread and I felt worse, so I just went over into the head and I threw up. I never was seasick again after that. So, whatever.
Well, That's you. Personally, I'd prefer stabilizers, but going through all that.
Nah, I'm
Smell
good.
of corned beef. Smell of corned beef hash kind of makes me a little queasy sometimes. But I usually won't throw up unless someone throws up on me.
Well, I didn't think the ship pitching was actually going to be that bad until the first time we were really in some heavy seas, and the thing is listing left and right or port and starboard, whatever, and it's an all metal ship, and it was creaking like a wooden pirate ship in the movies, and I'm going, really? It's creaking, and it's pitching so bad. They're telling everybody to stay in your berthing area, and I mean, you still had access to the whole ship, but the aircraft are tied down or below decks, and I mean, it's just. So when I ended up going into the head to throw up. The head has got a bunch of sinks on one side and a bunch of toilets and stalls on the other side, and the toilets are flushed with seawater. So they bring the seawater in, they flush it, it goes out the side of the ship, right? The ship was pitching so bad that water was coming out of the toilets onto the deck. And good thing they got those knee knockers, right? Because it compartmentalizes the room. So all that toilet water was sloshing back and forth across. Somebody's going to have to clean it later, right? Good thing it wasn't getting out in the passageway and all that. So I am in shower shoes walking through saltwater toilet water to the toilet. And the ship is rolling back and forth to go stick my head in the toilet and throw up. And after I did, I felt better, and I never got seasick again.
Or one viewer just threw up. I can tell you my story. When I was a kid, I didn't used to have seasick problems. When I got older, I did, because I didn't do as much sailing as I did when I was a kid. But this one story is when we took a Columbia 28 sailboat from Marina del Rey to Catalina. Everything was fine. Then we hit the north point of Catalina Island. We had this huge wind that came around the tip of the island, and the sailboat was like the wind blow was so strong. It's like the sailboat was the keel was, it was almost flat on the water, but we were just hauling ass. But when we had to tack from side to side to get around, it's like you could hear everything in the kitchen when we tacked one way, just all the dishes and forks and knives would just clang and clatter as we tacked over. It's like you couldn't even worry about it. And then, but the sailboat was like almost flat down from the wind. But obviously the keel kept it going. And then as soon as we got around the tip of the island, the wind just died to zero. It went from like a huge gale force wind to like nothing. And so at that point we were only like, I don't know, 50. We were 100 yards from the rocks. And so my uncle, my Vietnam War veteran uncle, it was me and my friend and him. And I was, 17, 16. And anyway, so he couldn't start the Johnson motor. So he didn't know what to do. We pulled up the Johnson motor out of the housing that it's in, and spilled gasoline all over the deck doing that. And my uncle can't figure out what's wrong with the fucking motor. We can't figure out what's wrong with the fucking motor, but it won't start. So there's the deck is awash with gasoline, and my uncle is starting to get a little nervous, and so he wants a cigarette. So he pulls out his lighter to light a cigarette, and my friend just rips the cigarette out of his face and throws it into the ocean. He says, "You fucking idiot! Look down at the deck. There's gasoline all over the deck." And so, he almost blew up his own boat anyway. So I said, "Well, why don't we get rid of this Johnson and we're towing a dinghy with it, and had a Seagull like half horsepower little Seagull dinghy engine. Well, why don't we use that one?" And I was like, well, it's better than nothing. And so we put in the Seagull engine, and that one worked. It was only half an hour horsepower, but it took us from like noon or whatever when we hit the north point of the island, and to about 1 at night before we got into the Cat Harbor on the seaward side, sea-facing side of the Catalina Harbor. And it was like we got in, and there was like we were kind of tired, but then my uncle was. You'd think a Vietnam vet would have almost blown up his own boat, but anyway, we get to the harbor, and he almost runs into like some of the moored boats, and then the harbor master motors on over and says, "What the hell are you guys doing?" And my uncle says, "Well, I have two inexperienced young children on board. Can you help me get to a mooring?" And we almost threw him overboard. We were like, if it wasn't for us, you would have blown up your own boat, you fucking idiot. And so anyway, the harbor master gets us to a mooring, and the sun comes up, and then I get tasked. We bringing the Johnson. We put the Johnson motor in the dinghy, and this is my naval story. This is as close as it gets for me. And we take the Johnson in the dinghy to shore, and we obviously put the Seagull back into the dinghy. And then I have to carry the Johnson motor on my back all the way across the island because there's the mechanic shop on the other side of the island. So I have to carry it. So I carry this motor on my back all the way across the island. The guy there works on it, says, "Okay, it works now. Take it I have to carry it on my back all the way back." And we put it back in the dinghy, take it out to the ship. And when we finally leave the harbor, like in a day or two, as soon as we get outside the harbor, it breaks down. That stops working again. So out comes the Johnson. We put the Seagull dinghy motor back in, and in between a little bit of wind and the dinghy motor, we make it back to Marina del Rey at 3 a.m. or something. I never saw Marina del Rey with it looked like that calm. It looked like sailing in on a mirror. You could see all the harbor lights and all the hotel lights and whatever. I had never seen it that flat, calm, and just like a perfect mirror as we like kind of broke through the water at 3 a.m. But so anyway, I'm sorry. Back to the Battleship. How do we get on this anyway? We were at the radio room because this is a radio center. This is like part I'd be interested in actually.
They've got it behind plexiglass, so you really can't see in there. I mean,
I think I see some patch cords hanging on the left. Scroll left. Okay, those aren't patch cords. Okay, scroll right. Okay, those are on the right. Those look like Western Electric boxes, tube radio boxes of one kind or another.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of administrative stuff too. So, coded messages back and forth,
code books.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Western Electric stuff. Ooh, that'd be so interesting. Yeah, that was like the same radio. Those two black boxes on the left. Those look like the same radio that was in the fire control room. They had one of. So I think that's like some kind of amplifier unit to turn up and down the volume of either sending or receiving. And the ones on the right, those gray boxes, look like Western Electric. Some kind of Western Electric company box. When I had my recording studio, what's interesting is we had one of the guys that worked for me he built some vacuum tube limiters and mic preamps, and he also liked to work on like old stuff like that Western Electric stuff you're looking at and fix. Sometimes someone would bring to him some old thing like that wasn't working, and they'd say, "Here, fix this," and they'd pay him to fix it. And when that happened one time, he found an old radio tube that he needed to be replaced because it didn't work. So he took out his parts matching book, and he looked up the part number on the tube that he had to replace. And he looked it up in his parts book, and it had a radiation disposal hazard warning on it because the element in the tube was plutonium. They actually made plutonium vacuum tubes in World War II. And most people didn't believe that story. I had a little digital post leaf news thing that I would hand out to my clients or put up, and that can't be true. It's like, but yeah, if you that is how you would find it. You look up the parts number in a matching book, like parts equivalent book, if you want to find an equivalent modern day vacuum tube to replace an old tube. But it had the radiation disposal hazard warning in the book, a parts book listed there.
Don't some electronics have isotopes or some shit in them or something? I don't know. It's not really radioactive. I
Well, this was radioactive.
I mean, the isotopes are radioactive because they glow or whatever. I'm thinking about the glowing things, like night sights.
Yeah, well, this was a vacuum tube for use for audio.
Yeah.
So, but I talked a little bit earlier about the Manhattan Project and how they had to use silver to make calutrons, to make plutonium or uranium 235, and so they had to seize all the government had to seize all the silver from the Treasury Department, but they never listed it because it was top secret, so it never went on the books. So they actually don't know how much silver there really is because it's always been a military secret going back to the Manhattan Project. Anyway, but this is an interesting radio room. It's one of my. That's probably where I would have worked if I was in the Navy, in the radio room. But I don't see any.
One of those commo guys.
Communications, yeah.
Hiding in the radio room, acting like you're busy doing work.
And I'd be listening to Benny. What was that? What the horn player's name?
I don't know.
I'd be listening to music on the radio.
Not for me.
No. The one. Never mind. I'll tell you next week who I was thinking of. World War II trumpet player that everybody liked.
So this is a damage control exhibit, not necessarily a dedicated damage control space. May have been, or they just use the space up here, but you see all the different things they've got. I mean, a lot of it there is obviously for firefighting, because that is the big danger on the ship. And they got that hatch secured so you can't get in there. Here he is with his breathing apparatus. So he's got his oxygen supply or his air supply there, and his mask and all that.
Well, is that the one from the sub? What was the name of the one they used on the subs?
I can't remember. I should have looked that up and did a comparison picture. It's probably the same deal because, I mean, it's the 1940s. But,
yeah, I remember it was named after somebody. I can't remember the name. All right, we both failed our submarine breathing.
Scott?
It was something else. I don't remember.
Yeah, we talked about the one that was used to escape from the sunken sub that only was ever tried once, and then we talked about the equipment for firefighting was obviously something way different.
So this is a firefighting one, okay?
Yeah, and they still use this type of equipment today on Navy ships. There's some gear lockers, and there's some racks that are triced up, and this is one of the chutes there that they would send the powder bags up in. Blacksmith, pipe, coppersmith shop. So even though we've already seen 2 rooms where they had lathes or machining equipment, and we've also seen the carpenter shop, they've got a blacksmith, pipe, and coppersmith shop. So that's kind of interesting with this ship here. So the blacksmith shop is with the repair and damage control division. Let's see here. Small items from trays, lockers, and chests to larger items like ventilation, drainage. Yeah,
it's almost like a medieval town. It's got a blacksmith, a wood shop. All they need is a pub.
Well, think about all the ductwork alone. I mean, you gotta have somebody who knows sheet metal. So here it is. They've got a hood here.
They're gonna be building swords or anything.
They had Class 6 back then on those ships.
Class.
Class 6?
The liquor store?
Yeah.
No.
Or just liquor, period. I mean,
So you were not allowed to drink on board the ship, but I don't know if they did this in World War II, but I know that they did it later on because we did it. Is what they have a steel beach, and that's where you would take the flight deck, or I guess on this ship just the deck, and you would have a cookout, and everybody gets 2 drinks.
Well, that's where cruise ships have it all over naval. We had a casino and a bar. So
I don't want guys on duty on the ship drunk, but we had a big vault up in officer country, and they got 2 pallets of beer in, and they locked the beer in the vault, and it was for the steel deck, the steel beach. But here you can see in a blacksmith shop they've got a hood. Now I don't see any plumbing attached to that, but it could have been vented right out, like in a modern welding shop where you would have something like this. This would be a fabrication table for welding or something like that, and the hood would catch all the fumes and vent them out. So
you have an anvil. Yes, is that an anvil somewhere?
Yeah, that is an anvil. Yep, you're right. Like Wile E. Coyote. So.
I was thinking more Forged in Fire, not Wile E. Coyote.
Well, Acme. So there's a blacksmith shop. There's a little bit closer view. This I believe is for bending sheet metal or pipe. And let's see, what did they got in there? That's oxygen. So maybe oxyacetylene cutting torch. Yeah, here's another shot of the passageway, watertight door, meat knocker. Here's the rail for the ammunition. This is another gear locker. I'm not sure what, something for repairing the ship. Got the old wrenches, whatnot here. And then this is another area with displays. Got all kinds of different artifacts. Here's some shells. Here's the American and the Japanese. They've got an Arisaka rifle in here. Yeah, there's a closer view of the Arisaka. It's got a bayonet on it.
I'd like to buy one of those shells just to have, put it in my living room.
So these are showing the different areas where the Alabama got her battle stars.
How many battle stars does the Alabama have?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At least 8. So.
Was she just artillery platform during amphibious operations, or was she actually in any battles?
Yeah, she was in battles. She was actually in a battle with the sub that is there. The drum. They were actually on the same combat zone together. So, yeah, it was in some battle. I mean, were you talking about ship to ship battles?
Yeah.
There was only one battleship to battleship battle in World War II. So, I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. No, I should say
in the Pacific.
Sorry, in the Pacific. Yeah, in the Pacific. So, yeah, but I mean, when you're bombarding the shore, they're shooting back at you. So, and you got planes coming in at you. So, so here we go. Let's see. One of the shells, high capacity projectiles, which I'm gonna guess is their high explosive. So 1,900 pounds, and it looks like this. So this is the.
And the battle in the Pacific was the Washington versus the Kurosawa, I think. Kirishima. Yeah. Iron Battle Santa Cruz. Iron Bottom Sound.
Well, there's a display right there that explains how each of the battle stars was earned, but I don't have a close-up of that. And then here's the armor-piercing shell. This is the 2,700-pound shell. So that one looks like that. This is the taller shell.
How tall is it?
About 6 foot.
It's bigger than most people.
I I guess 6 foot's kind of average.
Most people aren't 6 feet, unless you go by the NBA.
So here they've got Imperial Japanese Navy. I'm guessing he's an aviator. And here is a guy up on the deck who's directing anti-aircraft fire. And here are some of the powder bags there for the main gun. And this is some sort of, I'm guessing, a rangefinder or something maybe. Let's see if I can zoom in on it. It says do not touch, so I didn't touch it. It is a director. It is a gun director. I'm guessing this is for smaller guns though. So you see how light it is. We're getting back up onto the main deck here. No, I didn't. So this display right here shows the USS Hartford and the CSS Alabama. So let's see if I can get a close up. So the Hartford served from 1858 to 1926. And they were going to try to turn it into a museum ship, and they towed it to some place where they were going to restore it and whatnot, but it sank at its moorings, so they scrapped it in 1956. Parts of the ship, you see here, this is a part off of the ship. Parts of the ship are all over. As a matter of fact, there's some cannons from the ship right here in Michigan that I've seen before, and I had no idea they were cannons mounted on this model. On the actual ship that this is a model of. But they were this ship had served so long they were going to turn into a museum. It just didn't really happen. And the CSS Alabama was a Confederate raider during the Civil War, and even though she only served 2 years, she had a very successful career, and was eventually she engaged with a Union warship. This is a raider, so it's armed. But it's more heavily armed than a merchant ship, but it's not as heavily armed as a warship. And it was defeated in battle off the coast of France in 1864. And these are not original tables from the ship, so I don't know if this was there for some other thing they were doing at a later point. There's a model of the ship. It's a big open space here. We're getting more towards we're heading out. I'm not sure what all this is up here on the wall, but there's on the bulkhead.
Those 20 millimeter
that? Oh yeah, it is. You're right. Yeah, they are
millimeter
drums.
drums
For the Orlicons. Yep, you're right. Yep. Good call. Thank you.
No problem.
And here's another mail slot, and we're up on the deck again. So there's one of the 20 millimeter guns, and there's the drum magazine for it. I think they had these in single, twin, and quad mounts, or single and twin. But I think on this ship, all the ones on display were single mounts. All right, so
now was the Orlicon? That's the. Now I can't remember. Is that the one where you have to use like the drive or the chain to actually load the weapon? I can't remember offhand.
I've never operated one. I'm familiar with the name, and I know that they were used for a long time, and I know that they're not the same 20 millimeter shells that we loaded in the Gatling guns that I worked on. But I'm not sure.
I think you need to use some sort of a chain drive because the spring is so much. But I'm pretty sure that was a gun used by like lots of world powers against each other.
I don't know if the Axis had a copy of it or.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they sold them to both sides. It was used against each other.
I mean, just like the Maxim, so why not, right?
Yeah.
So here, coming out onto the bow of the ship, and you can see the 2 forward main batteries, and you can see up there, you got the anchor chains and whatnot. This was some sort of, or this was the kind of hoist type mechanism. You can see there's the railing again for this. So this would be what you would be moving along that rail for transporting ammunition. And here we were in and out of the superstructure at different points. There were different angles of view. Out here, you can see up here. This is the bridge here on the left, and right up here is where you had the battle bridge and a few other things going on up in here that were directly related to fire control. Each of these radars did something different. Like this radar, I believe, was for these 5-inch guns, but this radar up here was for anti-aircraft, I think. And then there's a radar fore and aft that's for the main batteries. I was trying to do some research trying to tell the difference between the radars and what they did, but I didn't get far enough into detail on that. So the Mark 8 fire control radar on the Mark 38 gun director. Yeah. There's some more Oerlikon cannons. Here's the superstructure on the starboard side. You can see the bridge right there. You can see Beaufort. No, those are twin Oerlikons. Yeah, right there. Let's see here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah, so there's a twin Oerlikon mount there, side by side. And next to two singles. Yeah. There's the 5-inch guns. And then we're going back in. I'm not sure what this was all about, but sure it has something to do with sending messages. There's a searchlight up there.
How many? I know you don't know the answer to this, but how many lumens are those searchlights?
Moving right along, here's another view of fire control radar. Here's some more of this stuff for whatever. Here's a dual 5-inch guns, secondary armament. You see from above. More of the same radar we looked at before, just from a different angle. 5-inch radar director. So each director could handle one or all of the 5-inch mounts. And there were 8 mounts for a total of 16 guns. And I believe this is the one that is for the main armament. The 16-inch guns. I believe there's one of these forward and one of these aft, and then the 5-inch, I believe, were mounted on the side. Climb into the crow's nest if you want to, I guess. There's
Really?
Well, if you were on the ship, I ain't going up there. And
Oh, they had a bell that they could ring for general quarters or something.
I imagine they'd get over to the 1MC and sound the klaxon for that.
So what was the bell for? Just 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock time?
Tradition. See, I don't even know if there was a bell on my ship. They called everything over the intercom, so I don't know. I suppose somebody was out there to listen to hear you ring it. It's an old tradition. There's a lot of traditions in the military, and you kind of lose something when you start losing traditions. So here's your 2 forward 16-inch gun batteries here. There's a better view of the bell. Climb back down inside for something. Was looking through the portals here for something. This might have been up on the bridge. I don't think this is up in the battle bridge because it's not thick enough. On the New Jersey, we went up in the battle bridge, and the walls were like a foot thick. So you can see some of these. There's iron bars over there, so you can't get up there. But some of this stuff is really steep, and yeah, you couldn't get up there. There's looking at one of the fire control radars from behind, above and behind. Here it is again. Crow's Nest.
So let me ask you, what was the overall vibe or sense that you got from being on the ship?
I don't think people realize how rough the people who served in World War II had it, how Spartan their living conditions were, how the sense of urgency to put the war to an end was. I mean, people were making a lot of sacrifices. People today just wouldn't stand for a draft. They wouldn't stand for rationing. They wouldn't live in tight quarters on a ship and not be able to call home. They wouldn't. They would quit. They would literally go. I don't care. Lock me up. Do whatever. But I'm not going to handle another air raid on our ship. I'm quitting. And they just stomp their foot and pout like a little. I mean,
It's hard to do when you're on a ship. You can either jump overboard or
no, they'll throw you in the brig, but whatever. And then when you get back stateside, you can go to Leavenworth. But you get to see the ship looks tough. The ship looks as strong as a battleship really should look. But you had to think about the men that were on board that ship.
And to be strong too.
With this, I could say the men, not the men and the women. Because well, what about the women? They're in World War II. They're just, and it's not that women can't do this sort of thing. It was just a different time. And that's another thing. You were looking at it, and it was a different. There were some things I saw that reminded me of my ship, even though my ship is not modern by any stretch. I mean, I'm an old guy, but I saw stuff that was still in use in the '90s, right? And but then I saw stuff that was much older, and made me realize how good I had it. But I think it's a good example of how strong this country used to be, and how much the people were patriotic and willing to sacrifice.
Well, I mean, it was. I mean, you do have to say it was a different thing because it wasn't just a war. I mean, the enemy had a face. It wasn't just a guerrilla war. I think a lot more people were on board because of that reason, but I mean, we can't seem to win any wars without a draft. I mean, I'm referring to Vietnam and the War on Terror.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, if you look at the fact that there was a battlefront, there was a uniformed enemy with a face. I mean, you do have a point when you put it like that, but still, overall, I remember after 9/11, this country came together. It didn't take 2 years before the country started tearing itself apart again. I mean,
I think the people have a lot more in common than we actually believe. But what I think is we let these politicians divide us on things that aren't even the big picture. Maybe we don't let ourselves be divided, but the news, I don't know. But I think that we have a lot more in common than we could ever believe. I think that it's just the differences are, blown up, set on fire, and then, blown up in our face.
Well, I think Sun Tzu said no nation profits from long wars, and these wars have gone on for a long time. The thing in Afghanistan, it's been going on for I think it's the longest war in history of the United States. If I'm wrong, somebody can correct me on that. But
I'm pretty sure you're right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it is.
Wow. I mean, I think my uncle said World War II was the last good war. If there's no such thing as a good war, it wasn't anything good about it. But at least it ended. That was the good part about it. It had an ending. And so I think that's the main problem is that wars, the long wars, that no country profits from a long war, and that's what we've been stuck with. So if like Trump wanted to pull us out of Syria, it's like, okay. I mean, we only had 2,000 guys there. We weren't going to do any nation building. If the Syrians and the Russians and the Iranians want to have it, we'll just draw a line around Israel, and if Israel, we'll wait till Israel and Iran get into it, and then we'll have to deal with it then. I don't think being in Syria is going to do any of our troops any good. I certainly didn't want to have a U.S. base there. I mean, it's just that's like Syria is almost like a free fire zone at this point. It's like no rules of engagement. There's, I mean, our allies are enemies. All of our allies are enemies with each other, and all of our enemies are enemies with each other, but they're allied against us. The whole Middle East makes no sense. It never has. So, I know there's a big controversy about that. Do we have any more Battleship pictures?
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Okay. Well, by all means, proceed.
So once you get the shells and powder, in the chutes, where does it go? Well, sometimes it goes up inside the turret, but here we've got this is here 5-inch 38, which are the secondary armament. During an air attack, the 5-inch guns were fired as rapidly as possible, which requires them to be loaded at any angle of elevation up to a maximum of 85 degrees. This loading machine can be set to any elevation up to 85 degrees and was used to drill the 5-inch loading crews. So they would actually have this out here on the deck, and they would practice with it, being able to put these shells at any angle that the guns inside the turret would be at. So it wasn't all just working inside. It was practicing outside. Practice. Here's one of the 5-inch gun turrets. Climb up inside of there. And let's see if I got any pictures from the inside. I do. So here is the breech that you loaded in. And you can see it's up at an angle, kind of like those machines they were using to practice loading this without actually having to be inside and using live ammunition. And here I think this is where they bring it up, and then you grab the shells and you throw them in the breech here off to the left here and fire the gun. Yeah. So they come up here on the right and you load them on the left. So that's why they're constantly practicing. I bet those guys had really strong arms. Here's some seat you set on, and really not sure what all the equipment in here is. I think we were looking at a periscope in the main battery, but I don't remember a periscope in the 5-inch turret. This, I'm guessing, is where you would probably dispense with a shell casing or something like that. Because of the way it's set up there, it's kind of angled, it's beveled, whatnot. Maybe just to kick something out, get it the heck out of the turret if you had to. There's another view up, and there's another view of the turret from the side, behind it, back inside the turret. Somehow or another, I got these out of order. Well, whatever. Here's a seat that you set in. This is probably part of the fire control for that, and there's a little window there to let in some light. I don't know if there used to be a hatch there or what they had, maybe to bring in some fresh air. But when I was inside this turret, I got a feeling that it would be cramped and hot, and the air would be pretty bad, and it would not be a good place to be during a fight. Out on the deck, at least you get some fresh air. Yeah, somehow or another in here, I screwed this part of it up, and I didn't edit it very well. What they stored in here, I have no idea, but whatever it was stored upright.
Barrels? Gun barrels?
Maybe replace. I don't know. There was nothing on that display. Why I left that there, I don't know. And there's a hatch, but what I wanted to really show, you can see the teak deck. This would be something the carpenters would be repairing a lot.
Yeah, I worked on teak. Start to rot.
You just dropped out.
I'm sorry. Did I just drop out? I was saying I worked on teak decks on my uncle's Columbia 28, so I just, not the deck, but they had teak all over it, and I had to sand a lot of it. So if you don't sand it, it kind of rots.
Well, they might have been up there every day sanding it, for all I know. So here's a view from the bow, looking back onto the ship, and right up here, we're right here on the bow, and there's a view of the ship from down there where they've got the armored vehicles. So that's the USS
That's
Alabama.
a great shot. It's a great shot.
Well, thanks. I like my pictures. So there she is in World War II, firing her broadsides in all of her glory. You can see the ship actually pitch a little bit there.
So what can you tell us what battleship her battle stars as far as the history goes on what battle she was in?
I can try. Let's see here. Stop sharing, right? You are presenting to everyone. Well, then how do you not present to everyone?
Okay, here, I'll stop presenting you. All right.
All right, now I don't get that. Let's see here. Let's see. So the USS Alabama are 9 stars. USS Alabama and USS Drum were both at the island of Mayuro in the South Pacific in June 1944. Oh, they weren't in a battle. They were being refitted. Okay, my bad. That's the only known time that they were ever in proximity during World War II. All right, USS Alabama battle stars.
Google foo.
Yeah, because let's see. Let's see what it says. Their website for the actual memorial park where it's at. They allude to a lot of stuff, but they don't go into detail in it. Let's see. Does it say anything about earning battle stars? No. Where's the Navy site on it? Where's the Navy site on it? It is. I thought I had that one up here. Yeah, those are just pictures. I don't know. She earned some battle stars.
Okay, I'm sorry I asked.
I mean, that's. Yeah, I don't. She was all over. She kicked ass.
Of course, it was a battleship. That's what battleships do. All right. These things are fun for me. I like looking at them, and because I'm a military history nut. So yeah, that's why I asked about the history. I'll have to look it up and put some links in the video description later. After we have some more time with Google Foo to find a little bit more on it. But if you stuck around this long to the end, thank you for tuning in and watching the Battleship edition of Lock and Load. And I always have fun doing these Battleship shows. Hey, Merry Christmas, everybody. There's a lot more to life than the things that you can see.